Poppins?
Singing in the rain.
Corbin Lingenfelter right here on the ones and twos. Good Wednesday morning to you. Is that IU Nation right now dancing in the streets?
I mean, they should be. That was a hell of a win.
How about
Seriously.
a little starting lineup change? How about a little zone action from Mike Woodson and company? Certainly the win of the year. Hell, the win of the last 2 years for Indiana last night in East Lansing. And of all the teams we were keeping an eye on last night, who would have thought it would be the Indiana Hoosiers getting their first-ranked win in nearly 2 years. Good Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for spending it with us. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Corbin Lingenfelter. I've got a short one today. I've got about a half hour in me. I've got jury duty. Did you ever watch the show Jury Duty?
I actually have not seen this show.
Oh, you'd be laughing your ass off. Amazon Prime. Excellent. So I've got 30 minutes in me. I got a couple segments, and then I'm off to jury duty. So we'll recap a lot of hoops here in the first couple of segments. We did get Mike Woodson indirectly talking about his retirement there very late in the press conference last night. But again, the win of the year for that program, and now some life in the bubble. And then, of course, last night, the 7 o'clock action. James, I know you and I were both kind of juggling Purdue on Peacock and the Pacers on TNT. Let's begin with the National Basketball Association team. They have not played well in February. We saw a starting lineup change that Rick Carlisle was coy with us at 8 o'clock yesterday about.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it led to anything of substance, certainly in a positive direction. And now they have a back-to-back to close out the first half of the season. And again, just in general, they have played poor basketball here in the month of February. And last night, the Knicks absolutely just made every hustle play. In typical Knicks fashion, Josh Hart is who I want Max Bone to emulate one day.
Yeah, he's honestly what you would teach your kids to play basketball like. And I'll give you credit for the starting lineup question. You definitely influenced some things, Kevin. But in all seriousness, I thought that they just did not ever adjust to Josh Hart. I'm like, how many times can this guy cut down the baseline and get a layup? I'm like, is anybody ever going to put a body on him? And I understand that's kind of his bread and butter. He does it to every team. But to do it against the Pacers, knowing that you've scouted this team, you had a playoff series against this team,
Exactly.
and he still
Especially after
does
last year,
the
the playoff
same
series.
thing. Yeah, so that I knew had to be frustrating. Obviously, we'll get into Rick Carlisle's comments about why the lineup change was made. But I think overall that performance was a pretty bad one, a pretty poor one. And then I think it was actually their, first back-to-back losses since December.
Yeah, just after Christmas, 26th and 27th, first time they've lost back-to-back games. Karl Anthony Towns looked like the starter in the All-Star game that he is. I think the unfortunate nature to last night, too, is, you hold Jalen Brunson to
8 points.
8 points. He battles major foul trouble. That had to be one of the fewest minutes he's played in a game all season long, and yet you still can't take advantage of it. So in Washington tonight, they're a huge favorite. They're a 10-point favorite, even without Miles Turner. They are on a back-to-back. Washington is not on a back-to-back. Obviously, the Pacers had to get on a plane as well. So that'll be 7 o'clock tonight in the nation's capital. And then the other one from last night, it was in Ann Arbor. Dude, I thought Braden Smith was going to do it there late.
Whoo!
I mean,
that ankle breaker?
Oh, that was absurd in the final 30 seconds from Braden Smith. You and I were on the same wavelength. He needed to be more selfish late. It was like I respect trying to make the right basketball play, and this is a bigger picture with Purdue. They've got the big three, and then, boy, does it drop off a cliff after that. And that's what really stung them late. Obviously, Michigan's size, I think, kind of imposed their will, but the others for Purdue struggled to make plays in the final few minutes. Braden Smith tried to be heroic, nearly was heroic. His desperation, what do you call that, kind of desperation running three at the buzzer?
Yeah.
Did not go. Purdue loses their first road game in quite a while, 75-73 in Ann Arbor.
That was one of those games or moments where I thought if they had maybe 1 or 2 more seconds, you can get a better look, especially in college basketball because you can't advance it. But Braden definitely was brilliant down the stretch. And I think, obviously, when Trey Kaufman ran and Caleb Furst get into foul trouble and they're not available late, it's really tough. And there were just a few key moments where they couldn't get that crucial rebound, and the fouls just kept piling up. And credit to the Wolverines for making some free throws and getting Dusty May's crew over the top at the end. But, I mean, it got to a point where I was like, be selfish, yelling at my TV, be selfish, because we saw what Braden can do when he wants to just turn it on as a scorer. And so obviously the sky isn't falling in Purdue, but it is a loss where it stings. But then later on that night, you look up and you go, thank you, IU, for, handling business.
I almost said Mike Woodson. Matt Painter didn't want to go there post game, but you have to get a little bit more out of your bench.
Absolutely.
James, they played 4 guys. They combined for 41 minutes, and they had 0 points, 0 assists, 8 rebounds, and 2 turnovers. I understand you're rolling with Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Wren, and Fletcher Lawyer as scorers, but boy, I mean, if you're a Purdue fan, you're on your knees praying Miles Colvin and Cam Heide give you something. They can't throw it in the ocean. Both those guys shot it great last year.
Yeah.
From 3 right now. So I think that, again, bigger picture, hey, Purdue, second weekend. Could they get all the way back to the Final Four? Those are some things to keep an eye on. So we'll have you covered again. A ton of hoops reaction coming up today. A little bit of Colts chatter with Nate Atkins from the Star. He joins us at 8:30. James, I know yesterday we talked a little bit draft. We'll talk some Colts free agent thoughts. Mark Dykton, you'll be co-riding with James Boyd here the final 2.5 hours?
Sure, yeah.
Have you ever jury dutied it up?
No, I told James yesterday, I was like, that's like the one thing I've never gotten the opportunity to do. You and Jake have done it now. My whole family has done it, except for me. I've never gotten summons. I've never gotten anything. I think it's because I want it so badly.
I thought I could just walk over.
I want it so badly, and I haven't gotten it.
I thought I could just walk over here, but I guess I got to drive a little bit. Justice Way is where it says I need to go.
I've
here,
never been.
I mean, it sounds accurate.
Here at 8 o'clock.
Kevin going to deliver some justice.
And Mark, do you care to share with our audience what you wished upon me here?
Oh, so, yes. We were having a very fun discussion in our group chat that I hope you get sequestered in like a murder for hire trial for like 3 months. And so you get out like just in time after like the Colts have signed Aaron Rodgers. They've traded away Anthony Richardson for a swing tackle.
Tigers won the Masters.
And then Marcus Freeman has left to go coach at a real school.
I was like, is he going to jury duty or is he going into a coma and he's waking up in,
No, he's going to have no phones. He's going to have no knowledge of the outside world.
That might be the hardest part. I mean, I'm addicted to my phone more than anything in the world.
Yeah, it'll be like you'll come out of.
Is this going to be healthy for me?
No, probably not.
Corbin,
this is like a darkness retreat for you. Like
Corbin also wished upon me
darkness retreat.
that Notre Dame would fire Micah Shrewsbury and they'd hire Mike Woodson.
Yeah. We were having some fun with Kevin. I don't think you were
that
receptive
might be the darkest thought I've ever had. So, Corbin, thank you for putting that into my brain. In all seriousness, last night, certainly some credit to Mike Woodson, that staff, that team. James, it was another ugly start. And
yes,
they go zone after the under 12 timeout. They're down 18-8 for those that, for whatever reason, didn't watch or didn't stay up. And that zone looked like, you can insert your Jim Boeheim Indiana joke here, but let's just say, whatever. Boeheim winning the 03 national title. Michigan State had no answer for it. And, I thought 2 things from Michael Woodson and company last night. And I say this in all seriousness. I think some real coaching. The zone obviously was a huge wrinkle. Michigan State is the worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. And you watch them try to operate against the zone last night. I'm sitting there thinking, boy, every team should implement zone against them. And once they went to that wrinkle down 10, it instantly changed the game. And then I felt like the starting lineup changes were needed for 2 reasons. I thought, A, the starting 5 that was out there last night, I thought that group had earned it based off how Miles Rice and Malik Reneau had played in recent games. And look what it did to Rice and Reneau. I mean, 2 of their best games of the season. And so those 2 things, the zone wrinkle, actual coaching with that starting lineup, it resulted in certainly the biggest win of the season, biggest win in the last 2 years, and life into the bubble. I don't, they still need multiple of these. Again, they have opportunities. They got 2 quad 1 wins at home sitting there if they can take advantage of it with UCLA and Purdue the next 2 games. Stringing them together is another story, but nonetheless, last night, very impressive from Indiana.
Absolutely, and I thought Malik Reneau was brilliant, especially down the stretch, shooting that lefty hook, and I was thinking, man, this is some
over the right shoulder all day long.
I mean, yeah, I was like, this is like your dad and you in the driveway where you just can't stop it, and I felt like every time he got to that right shoulder, he didn't make every shot, but he got a good look off, and then looking at the rest of the guys who contributed, I thought Miles Rice had a really good game. Gave him some pace, gave him some speed at times, got to the basket a few times. And I know that was one of the things that people have talked about as far as him using his speed more to create more for himself. And so I thought he had a couple of, key moments late. And then you're able to hang on. I think that was the biggest thing too, Kevin, because I was watching the entire game. And as Michigan State began chipping away, I was thinking, oh, here we go. And they cut it down, I believe, to maybe 2 a few times. And they just kept going to the line, the Hoosiers, that is, and knocking down the free throws to eventually ice the game. So credit to them for having that poise that we just haven't seen in late game situations as of late.
Am I allowed to bitch about the final 3 minutes?
Yeah, it took forever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what? Like, this is exactly why and I love college basketball. I love college sports. I probably like college sports more than I like pro sports. But the drag of the final 3 minutes of last night, that had to have taken a half hour.
It definitely did. I mean,
Michigan State was fouled. And again, credit to Indiana. It's probably the right thing to do. Indiana fouled Michigan State when they were up 3 different occasions with 14 seconds to go, 9 seconds to go, and 5 seconds to go. The same. I mean, it's just a parade to the foul lines. It's just such a miserable watch.
I know, but I commend IU for fouling because I hate when people ask
it's the right move,
if it's the right move. I'm like, it is the right move because,
watch.
2 is less than 3. That's the only reason. But it also, again, Kevin, goes back to, can you make your free throws on the other end then?
Which
that's
again,
what they kept doing.
It was dicey for Indiana there. They missed a couple front ends of the 1-and-1. They were up 9 with probably 2 and change to go.
Yeah.
And as you said, James, they cut it to 2. But I think it was Mbako hit 2, Leal hit 2 to ice it there. Michigan State did finally try to do the purposeful miss, and it did not work. So Indiana 71-67.
I feel like we just found your excuse for getting out of jury duty. You just start ranting about fouling late in college games. Like, this guy's out of his mind. Get out of here.
I feel like if I insert a few expletives, and then maybe that'll help me be back in studio by 9 o'clock there.
For a pop quiz.
I will say this, though. Shout out to,
in the bubble,
Mike Woodson and crew for denying, that Big Ten wins, outright title to
Tom Izzo and everybody in the building, right?
Yeah. So
he was going for the Big Ten win record. Of course, that is Bob Knight. Something fitting about Indiana going zone. Something Bob Knight certainly wouldn't have done. But in all seriousness, that was huge last night for Mike Woodson and company. A little bit of life for the Hoosiers here. So, again, good Wednesday morning to you all. We'll be recapping a ton of hoops here. I did want to make sure we stuck this in the opening segment. Yesterday was announced over at IMS that Doug Boles, the president of the Speedway, will also be taking on duties as president of IndyCar. Mark, we're efforting Doug Boles, correct, to have him on
we have
here
him.
potentially?
9 o'clock on Friday.
9 o'clock on Friday.
He texted me last night. He said he's good to go.
I felt like I've said this before, so apologize for repeating myself, but I'm not sure if there's a person in a position of authority, and let's just call it in the sports bubble here in our city, that has a better grasp of his or her job than Doug Boles. He is just an outstanding ambassador for, obviously, the rich history that means so much to the greatest spectacle in racing and the pageantry around that, but then also his ability to connect with a younger audience. And I said this last May, my sister-in-law has been a popular infielder, if you will, here in recent years at the 500. And, obviously there are people that have sat in the stands for 30, 40 straight races that are like, how dare anyone go in the infield? But she's been in the infield for 4 or 5 years. And then this May, she said to our family, hey, I'd love to sit with you guys in the stands. And Doug Boles having the wherewithal to be like, yeah, obviously we need to cater to the people that have made this place so special, but also be open-minded to say, EDM concert in the infield? Why not? Let's try something different. And if 1/10 of those fans have an interest in possibly sitting in the stands one day, you've done your job. So he has been unbelievable for the Speedway in a time where I think you see a lot of sporting events kind of waning a little bit. That's not been the case with the 500 at all. And so this is a big-time responsibility that Roger Penske has now thrown even more on his plate. So he'll double duty it. He'll continue to be the president over there at the Speedway and now take on the IndyCar duties. Their first race 2 weeks from Sunday. So that is Friday, you said, at 9 o'clock, Mark?
Friday at 9. We'll have them live.
100 days to the 500 on Friday. James Boyd, anything with the month of May yet for you? Or you have stayed away from any coverage on that?
I have stayed away. I do get asked every year to go, and so perhaps this year I'll finally go and just experience it. Because it seems like it's pretty fun, but I feel like every year I have some family obligation that I actually don't want to go to, but I'm forced to go to.
You're such an appreciator of like sports.
I am.
Like you would get something out of it. You would. So,
Yeah. I need to see why people. I mean, it's like
I
that
would
with the
highly
World
encourage
Cup.
you to go. And again, I'm not. I know that you're not. Going to be bonging beers in the infield or anything like that.
Well, hey, don't eliminate that as an option.
Well,
I know he doesn't drink, but you never know what could happen on the carpet.
This is true. This is true.
Weirder things have happened.
Peer pressure. But no, in all seriousness, I think it's one of those things where I like to be around people who absolutely love whatever's going on. And so I just can't hate on that. Like, I might not like certain things. Like, I'm not a huge baseball guy. I'm not a huge racing guy. I just didn't grow up like that. But
that's a great way to look at it.
if you put me in the moment, though, and people just love it, I'm like, all right, the vibes are good. Weather's great. Let's enjoy it.
Do you like to people watch, too? Because that's a fascinating event to be at.
Yeah, yeah.
Watch.
And what's
especially
the one?
Carb Day on Friday.
Uh-huh.
Is it the Snake Pit or something? They told me I have to, like...
Yeah, Snake Pit.
They were like, and they won't explain it to me. They're like, you just have to, like, experience it. And I was like, all right, so maybe that'll take that off this summer and see what's going on in May.
So big news there in the racing world and here locally as well. Well deserved for Doug Boles, so he'll join us coming up Friday at 9. Thank you for spending this Wednesday morning with us. It'll be a little bit of change of plans coming up here in about 15 minutes, but we'll have you covered all morning long. Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Certainly didn't think we would start a morning check down with the one winning team from last night being the Indiana Hoosiers, but that is indeed what happened in East Lansing. 71-67, their first win over a ranked team in nearly 2 years. James Boyd, we talked about it in the opening segment. 2 coaching items. 1, finally a starting lineup change. I thought rewarded the 5 that have most earned it here recently. And honestly, I thought it ignited Miles Rice and Malik Renew the most, those 2 going to the bench. And then after a sluggish start, Mike Woodson goes zone, and boy, did that look like vintage Jim Boeheim.
It did. I mean, that was what you needed to kind of counter the athleticism, the speed that we've seen from Michigan State. And,
yeah, their transition game.
Yeah, and they just couldn't shoot at all. I mean, that's one of the things that, you watch a lot of NBA basketball, and then you watch college basketball, and you're reminded of the skill, because I'm just looking like, man, that zone really works when you can't shoot. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, they were 4 of 23 from behind the arc. Worst Big Ten three-point team in the entire land, and so certainly a big wrinkle that helped them out. Mike Woodson talked about the big picture after the game, and yes, he did finally indirectly address his future.
Well, it's tough, man. They know that I won't be back. That's been tough on these guys. It's tough on me. But we still got a lot of season left, man, and I just want these guys to believe. I want them to get in the tournament and experience it and get in the Big Ten tournament and see if you can win it. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's not just getting there. You want to get there and try to win a Big Ten tournament and then see where that leads you. So, I just got to keep pushing them, keep them positive, keep them up.
Life for their bubble hopes. They still need, of course, a lot more on that resume, but certainly some life. That is a great win on the road. First home loss of the season for Michigan State. Indiana will host UCLA, who's yet to win away from home in this time zone here this season.
Is that the official check the box of the talking about it at the appropriate time and day? Did that check the box?
I think that's about all we're gonna get.
I was about to say, not going to get much more.
Nope, I don't think so.
So I see he's not talking to Don Fisher either.
Yeah.
Pre-game.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Quite the way to go out.
The Pacers lose last night. They have not been good here in the month of February. They were not good last night, particularly in the second half. There was a sequence there, James, where Jalen Brunson gets his 5th, and the lead grows. And Karl Anthony Towns sat for, I would say, a decent chunk with Brunson on the bench. Karl Anthony Towns had 40. Josh Hart had 30. And the Pacers were unable to do really anything of substance in making it interesting in the fourth quarter. Now it's a back-to-back for the Pacers. They are in Washington tonight. That is a 10-point underdog. Here was Rick Carlisle in the starting lineup change. Aaron Nesmith in, Benedict Mathurin to the bench.
I love the way Mathurin played off the bench. And there were a lot of indicators that were pointing to the fact that it was the right thing to do. A lot of things that were trending. In terms of who was playing with who and which was going a good direction and which was not, and so those guys handled it great. I thought Mathurin had a great energy when he came in the game in the first half and immediately made things happen, and so it creates a better balance on our team. Ben's a scorer, and Ben needs to get shots, and we have Ty and Pascal out there to start games, and this just makes it work better from an offensive standpoint. And we've got to get Aaron back into this. Tonight it was frustrating for him. He got the 2 quick fouls on Brunson, but we're at that point in the year where there are going to be frustrating things that happen. We got to find ways to give each other energy and push through.
I thought that Rick Carlisle's comments made sense, and I thought Benedict responded pretty well off the bench. 18 points, got to the line a lot, 9 of 11 from the free throw line. But obviously, your plan kind of soils when Aaron Nesmith gets into foul trouble and he's not able to really play. I mean, he only played 13 minutes last night, 4 fouls. 0 points, and it was just a rough day for him. So I like the philosophy behind it. Obviously, the execution has to be better from Aaron Nesmith.
First back-to-back losses in a month and a half for the Pacers, again, in Washington tonight. No Miles Turner. The Wizards stink. They have won a couple here to start February, but they've got, 9, 10 wins, I think, on the year. And the Pacers are a 10-point favorite as a road back-to-back traveling team here coming up. Tonight, lastly in Ann Arbor, it was certainly a wild finish there. Purdue is up 4 with about 3:30 to go, I want to say. And then Michigan, I thought Michigan's size kind of imposed their will on Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Furst fouls out for the first time all year. Trey Kaufman-Wren fouls out for just the second time all year. Braden Smith tried to be heroic, James Boyd, but it was not enough.
Not enough. And I thought Danny Wolf for Michigan was really big down the stretch.
Skilled.
Yeah. I'm seeing this guy cross over at the 3-point line and get to the rack, I'm like, what is going on? So he looked pretty good yesterday. Obviously, they were able to lean on him to kind of get him over the top. And as we talked about a few minutes ago, Braden Smith, I thought, just needed to be a little bit more selfish towards the end. And that's always the thing when it comes to these point guards that are really good at doing whatever they want. It's like, well, do what you need to do offensively, especially late.
Yeah, again, I mean, you got a freshman coming off the bench, misses front end of a 1-and-1 who never gets to the line. Caleb Furst has got a shot at the rim. It gets blocked.
That was a great play, by the way, too.
Yeah,
Just a great play.
Him that look. But Braden Smith hit a couple threes late, just absolutely filthy. Had a shot at the buzzer for the win.
I held my breath for that shot.
Did not go. I mean, to be fair, as a desperation kind of runner, but if that would have gone in, that would have been, 3 threes in the final 30 seconds for him?
Yeah.
I mean, he is just a one-of-a-kind player. Purdue next up. They've got Wisconsin coming up this weekend. All right, boys. I am out. Off to jury duty. I'll see you in 3 months.
Fan morning show on a Tuesday morning. We're kind of doing host musical chairs today with Kevin heading off to jury duty. So I'm Mark Dykton. James Boyd is right next to me. Corbin Lingenfelter here as well. Kevin could, maybe, possibly be back, I guess. He's heading to jury duty. He's like, never say never. And then we are quickly informing him that he cannot really be on his phone whatsoever once he gets in there. And he's like, you would have thought he saw a ghost.
Yeah, no, Corbin was breaking it down for him in detail, basically saying don't end up in jail. And I don't think the missus would be very happy about that. But knowing Kevin, I don't think he's a snitch. I don't think he's a rat. So I would hope that he, gets the job done over at the courthouse.
I told him to start saying like he's a local celebrity. Like, have you seen my We Grow Hair Indy ads? Do you know who I am? Have you tried the Daisy sour cream?
I'm just trying to think of ways that would get Kevin to like make someone guilty. Like if they get up there and they say, you know what, I hate Notre Dame. This is why I did XYZ crime. He'd be like, you know what, 100 years. I agree. He's guilty.
Yeah, if you've gotten out of jury duty, 317-239-1070, give us a call and let us know how you've gotten out of it so we can maybe pass that along to Kevin before he gets sequestered. We'll see what happens.
I mean, I got one thing in the mail last year for jury duty, and I actually forgot to call and make sure Corbin is like this guy. But
Corbin's going to lay down the law. He's going to
I didn't get asked to come in, so I got lucky. I called the next day, and I was like, oh, yeah, like that's that thing I was supposed to go to. So
somebody else texted me, and they said, one of the listeners texted me and said, yeah, he didn't show up either, and nothing ever came of it.
Yeah,
like, well.
So I was scared, though. I was like, oh, man, like I do not want to get fined for not being a responsible adult. So
maybe Kevin will be back, maybe not. I don't know, but we're here today on a was it Wednesday? I don't even know. I think I said Tuesday
Wednesday
to start off. It's Wednesday. Anyway, James, we had a busy night of basketball to go around. We've got Nate Atkins coming up. We got Bobby Riddell later in the show as well. Plus pop quiz. We've got a $25 cluster truck gift card with that. If you go 5 for 5, you also get the Jiffy Lube oil change as well. So where do you want to go here? Do you want to do some football talk? Do you want to talk some basketball? You just had an article I saw about the Colts, about some possible cap casualties, and an interesting name right at the top was Braden Smith.
Yes. So I had to do a list of potential cap cuts, cap casualties, as we call them. This is basically the equivalent of Black Monday in the NFL for when they get rid of executives and coaches. And so Braden Smith was number one on my list, not because of his play. He played 12 games last year, missed the last 5 due to personal reasons, played at a solid level. It's just the money. It will probably make sense to move on. So his cap number, to put it in layman's terms, is about $20 million for next season. The dead money, if they were to cut him and still have to pay him, the dead money is what you still have to pay, is $3 million. So basically, if you want to save roughly $17 million in cap space, you would cut Braden Smith before the next season approaches. And so that's one way where the Colts could get cheaper and possibly, considering the situation, we don't know what's going on with him. We'll get an update hopefully from Chris Ballard in a few weeks here at the Combine. But until then, it looks likely, even before then, unless he played at an all-pro level, it kind of makes sense for this team to explore other options at right tackle. Does that mean you draft another right tackle? Does that mean you go with Matt Gonzalez, who stepped in for him? That's one of those things where you have to play with the money. And again, it's so funny looking at this stuff, Mark, because you're like, man, all this cap space, and they got money to pay all these guys, and rich people do not want to pay other rich people ever. And so it's one of
There's
those
a
things.
reason they're rich.
Exactly.
They
and
hold
so
on to the money.
in all seriousness, it seems like it is a monetary thing more than anybody else on the roster when it comes to Braden Smith. So we'll see. And I'm curious to see how that kind of shakes out. But if I was leaning one way, it would be towards him not returning to the Colts this upcoming season, which would be 2 starting offensive linemen possibly not returning, including Ryan Smith, who's a free agent. So
yeah, Ryan Kelly, and I do think that this is one of the if not maybe the most interesting offseasons as far as the offensive line is concerned, because the transfer from 2024 to 2025 could be a drastic change of what we've seen in recent years as far as under Chris Ballard's tenure with the offensive line. We could see some actual significant changes, and we just don't even know what the answers are right now. I mean, they've obviously have some draft picks that they've spent on young talent, but we don't really know the full potential of that. They could go free agency route. That would also probably cost you a pretty penny, which that opens the pocketbook a little bit more than probably what they're used to. But offensive linemen aren't cheap. We're looking at Trey Smith from the Chiefs, who's he's going to get the bag at some point. If it's not from Kansas City, it's going to be from somewhere else in free agency. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do. There's some other names you have on your list, I really don't disagree with any of them. Like, at the end of the day, like, are they guys that have provided some bumps for you in the season and everything like that? Yes. But if they're not on the roster, are they going to truly make a difference? Not really. So you've got Braden Smith is obviously the most notable on your list. There's Ebukam, Raekwon Davis, Tyquan Lewis, Rodney Thomas, those kinds of guys where they're depth pieces. And while you would like to have them on there, if you can save some money and maybe find a better talent at maybe a cheaper price, I think you go that route.
Absolutely. And, some of these guys, when it comes to like Tyquan Lewis, I don't think that they're going to get rid of him. You save $4.5 million, and then you have a $2.5 million dead cap hit if you got rid of him. Is that really worth it? Is that difference in money enough for you to make that move? But for someone like, this was really like mind blowing to me. I guess it's because Rodney Thomas was a 7th round pick out of Yale, so not a lot of guaranteed money in this contract. And so I had to do a double take. So his cap number, what he's owed in 2025, he says on the roster, is $3.38 million. His dead money is only $24,000. So if they were to cut him, they would save and be able to spend $3.36 million with no Rodney Thomas on the roster. And that was I was like, wow, only $24,000.
I saw that and I was like, did James miss a couple zeros on there? That seems like that is shockingly low.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you are a late round pick and you're on a 4-year rookie deal, a lot of your deal's probably backloaded when it comes to, money, incentives, whatever the case may be. And so that's somebody I was like, man, I wasn't going into it thinking, Rodney Thomas, he wasn't even on my mind. But just, again, money-wise, if you can save $30 million basically by moving on from him, then you probably do it, because this is another guy who, if he were more trusted or believed in, he would have played. I mean, we went through all of training camp, and then we went through the season without this guy being really suggested ever as being, starting free safety. I know he started early on in his rookie year, but then since then he's kind of tapered off. And so we'll see how it goes. It's one of those things where it's going to change. I won't be perfect on my list, although I claim it now, and then when it's wrong, I'm like, I was hacked. That's usually my go-to. Or it was AI or something like that, but we'll see how it shakes out.
If Kevin's listening, he needs to write this down, that he was hacked or something like that. If they go through his social media or something like that at some point during this jury duty selection. In your heart of hearts, and I'll ask Nate Atkins this as well, like Chris Ballard, obviously end of season press conference, he talked about he needs to kind of change his philosophy and his way of thinking when it comes to free agency. In your heart of hearts, do you believe that this is going to be the year that Chris Ballard, when we get to free agency, we're going to be like, okay, that was different. That's something we haven't seen in the first 8 years with Chris Ballard. This is going to be different, or is this going to be like, as those were words in December and January, and then free agency comes and the actions don't really, the words don't lead to the actions.
I was going to say, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm thinking to myself, like, how broken is my heart? Do I have, enough heart in me to trust this guy?
That's true.
And I would say yes, mainly because of the changes you've also made to your staff. I don't think you can say at the end of last season, oh, don't blame Gus Bradley, we didn't give him enough talent, and then run it back, doesn't work, you get rid of Gus Bradley, you bring in Lou Anarumo, and tell Lou, hey, just make it work with who we got. No, you said that before. And so I think you kind of owe it to those guys to bring in some more talent. And then it sounded like he was really bothered by the ego comments from DeForest Buckner, not at DeForest Buckner, but just in general. He's like, I let these guys be too comfortable and didn't create enough competition. And I think that was a big source of irritation for him, and rightfully so, because if you look at this team and who they paid, and don't get me wrong, Kenny Moore's a good player, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, but collectively, there's no way anybody on that team should feel comfortable about anything. You haven't done anything. You haven't won anything as of late. I'll never forget being in the Giants locker room after that game where they blew the playoff chances. And, I'm talking to Michael Pittman Jr., and I was like, man, can you guys get over the hump? What's the difference? He's like, oh, we won big games here. And I'm like, thinking to myself, when?
Yeah.
And I think he said that just as a default. It wasn't like he was trying to create some controversy, just being positive around his team. I get it. But I'm like, no, name one. As you said, Mark, show me. It's like in school when you have like the little test.
Show your work.
Yeah. I never showed my work when I knew I was cheating. So I don't know.
My daughter, she's in second grade, and they're doing like this new math and everything like that. And she's like, I have to show my work, and she's trying to explain to me what she has to show. I'm like, it's second grade math. I don't know what you're showing me right now. I don't know what this is. I've never done this before. So yeah, I'm not good at math to begin with. So when you ask me to show my work, I would go like, you're on your own, kid.
See,
I don't know.
This is how I'm on a tangent now, but Mama Boy, shout out to Mama Boy. She would legitimately sit down after work and like teach herself our homework and then like go through it overnight and then wake us up in the morning and we go over our homework together. That way I can kind of get it, I guess, better before school. And I was thinking to myself now as an adult, again, kidless, loving the life, but when that time comes, I'm not doing that.
No.
Why am I, we going to send you to school and, let it, between you, God, and the educator. So we'll see how it works out.
There'd be times when my dad would stay up with me and it'd be like 10 o'clock at night on a weekday, and he's like trying to figure out the math, and I'm just sitting there like, I just want to go to bed. I'm not getting this and this and that. So I'm like, if I'm already struggling with second grade math and this new math, I'm like, I've never liked math to begin with. But I'm like, no, thank you. Hard pass on that. But yeah, I can't even name the most recent Colt, like the big Colts victory. What would that be? Like the winning against the Chiefs, winning against the Ravens. But those are like early season victories. Do you really count, or those are more?
That's what I'm saying.
Upsets and everything.
The one that came to mind for me was probably when they sealed it against the Patriots, or sealed it against Jacksonville when that was years ago when JT went off to get into the playoffs. But there just hasn't been enough of those moments. I mean, obviously your last playoff win came with a guy named Andrew Luck, and we know how long that's been. I was watching the Super Bowl. I was doing some stuff for The Athletic, and one of the weird stats I came across or notes was the last time that the Chiefs defense gave up 40 points in the playoff game was that wild comeback with Andrew Luck. And that was over 10 years ago. Can you believe that was 10 years ago?
No.
11 years ago?
No.
Like, that is nuts. So
that's when you really start feeling old, when you're like, wait, we're putting a 1 and a 0 on these now? Time's flying.
I know. So obviously getting back to this year's team, I think that there are numerous changes that are going to be made, and it's all going to be centered around, one, creating more competition, and then two, when it comes to the offensive line in particular, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, others, what can you do to enhance the job or the opportunity for Anthony Richardson? Because we can talk about all these things all day, but remember that comeback we were just talking about? We remember the quarterback. You watch these games and these moments in the playoffs, you remember the quarterback. Even when Philly had a really tough game against the Rams, Matthew Stafford made it that way. And so I think that's what I'm also most curious about, to talk to Chris Ballard to see what, the plan is for Anthony Richardson. I know they can't be around him 24/7, but what is the plan to not only build your roster around him, but him as an individual get better? Because I truly believe this is a make or break year for him and probably that regime, because this is who you hitched your wagon to.
I do think it's interesting that basically Jim Irsay said, yes, we're bringing back Chris Ballard for year 9. We have confidence in Shane Steichen. We've got, Anthony Richardson, this and that. I'm like, that's 3 guys at the top of the organization that you are hoping all figure it out in years that they're on the hot seat.
I know. Isn't
and I
that
think
something?
That's fascinating, because you are hoping that Chris Ballard in year 9 finally gets his act together and changes his philosophy and gets his team back in their winning ways. You're hoping Shane Steichen starts to figure out, as from the offensive guru that he's been claimed to be, that he starts figuring out from a head coaching standpoint, and can his system apply to Anthony Richardson? Because I feel like they're kind of going against each other's grain at times with some of the play calling. And then Anthony Richardson, which you spent the 4th overall pick on, is entering a critical year 3 that you're hoping that you finally start seeing some major strides in his play on the field. You also hope he starts figuring it out from a leadership standpoint. And also, you're kind of like, well, time is ticking, because this contract is going to come due. We're going to have to make either a 5th-year option decision or start working out a long-term extension that's going to be financially massive. That's a lot of things on the table that you're hoping 3 major parts of your organization just happen to all figure it out at the same time in a critical year where they could all be on the hot seat heading into 2026. I was like, oh, good Lord. That is all chips in, because you were putting all your chips on 3 guys that you hope just figure it out together.
And that's why I think it's probably more likely than not that they don't figure it out, just because you're depending on, and football is a brutal sport. I mean, you just never know when it comes to availability of certain players. Obviously, Anthony's availability is a big factor as well. And so we'll see how that shakes out. But I also think of it like this. When it comes to Anthony, you're asking him to do 2 things that he hasn't done since he's kind of become a high-level player, so to speak, when it comes to high school, to college, now the NFL, and the 4th pick overall, and it's to be accurate and to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And he just hasn't been those things. And so you're asking him to get it all figured out in year 3. And that's why I always get annoyed when people tell me, oh, he's only 22, he'll figure it out. It doesn't matter in the sense of the contract.
Right.
Your contract doesn't freeze just because you're young.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great incentive.
He can't run a car yet. Let's stop the contract.
Yeah, and I'm like, that doesn't matter because it does not freeze. The time is still ticking on the money part of it,
Right.
and you have to decide. But the good thing for Anthony, though, is all you got to be, if you're looking at opportunity, is like Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love had like half of a great season and got paid because it happened at the right time. Like, if Jordan Love has half a great season, but it's in year 2 of his contract and not year 3 or 4 or whatever, he ain't getting that bag.
No.
So if you're Anthony Richardson, you're like, you know what? Yes, year 1 and year 2 weren't what I wanted them to be. But if I am remotely good this upcoming season, I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it goes. I'm not saying
And if the Colts don't pay him, someone else will, if that's the case.
Exactly. And so I don't think that thing where he can come in and say, hey, give me, the absolute max or whatever, but he can definitely get paid handsomely. So we'll see. I'm excited about it. I'm curious to see how the combine goes as well, pick some brains, see some prospects, and, get the ball rolling. I love combine time just because all the guys that I spend hours agonizing over in my mock draft, I'm like, oh, you're a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes me feel better because I just learned, where you came from and read through your entire biography for you not to be drafted here, possibly. So,
I know.
We'll see.
It will be interesting, just Anthony Richardson overall, because I think regardless whether it's really good or really bad, you're going to have a answer one way or the other once the end of the season comes. Whether he's starting all his games and he's finally showing you like he's making progress and everything like that, you'll feel good about that. And if he's not, you're moving on from him, and you're going to probably have a high draft pick, and you're going to be figuring that out as well, the future of the quarterback position.
So here's a question, and feel free, either of you, to chime in. I'm just curious. When it comes to more competition at the quarterback position, is there such a thing as too much? For example, if you bring in a guy like Justin Fields, he's not coming here to be part of a sham process of picking who's the starter. Like, he's not coming here if you're just going to give the job to Anthony. He's coming here to probably take it, possibly. Right. So would you welcome that? Is that too much of a distraction? Do you want to bring in a guy like maybe Jameis instead, who kind of knows he's a backup?
I love Jameis. There's no denying that.
I mean, we have great quotes.
Yeah.
Certainly for a radio show, bring Jameis to any. Matter of fact, don't even have him play quarterback. Just have him be our court,
He was at the Super Bowl and he was just hanging out with comedians and commentary. I was all in.
Exactly.
I would say, at least in my personal opinion, that you need to not accommodate Anthony Richardson as far as his comfortability. Like, if he's not comfortable competing for the starting position, he hasn't solidified anything as far as you are QB1, stop and start. No, you haven't done that. So I think if you can bring in a Justin Fields or something like that, or if you go a more veteran route in free agency, or hell, if you even draft a quarterback,
by veteran,
he shouldn't get hurt feelings about any of that. He should be like, it's time to go to work. It's time to get better. And you would hope competition brings out the best in everybody.
So Mark Dockner reporting here on 107.5 The Fan that the Colts are going to target Aaron Rodgers as far as veterans.
Oh, God. Give me Jameis Winston 100 times out of 100. If
I was
that's
like,
the case.
Corbin's rolling his eyes like, James, why did you mention his name? And for the record, I do not think the Colts should pursue him, and they should absolutely not even consider that. And if they did, my goodness. A tangent, did you see Diana Rossini reported that when they met with Aaron Rodgers, they told him one of the stipulations, if he were to remain their quarterback, was that he couldn't go on the Pat McAfee show?
No.
Shockingly
that he would be like, I have to do it.
And then
that's the only time he was relevant this year.
The other funny thing that they said was a non-negotiable was that he had to show up to mandatory minicamp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, yeah, it's mandatory, but it's because he missed 2 days last year because he was in Egypt for a previously planned vacation. And I was like, wow, this is so ridiculous. You have to tell the guy, that mandatory actually means mandatory. Yeah. So, I don't think the Colts should welcome any of that nonsense. But getting back to what we're talking about when it comes to Anthony, I think you're right. If he can't beat out a guy like Justin Fields or even a Daniel Jones or welcome that, then yeah. So I was just curious to know how much is possibly too much. But At this point, I don't think that there's many quarterbacks out there that you can even bring in and feel great about.
No.
Because otherwise they wouldn't be available. I had to put out a list of free agents they might target. I got crushed by some commenters like, I hate these quarterback options. And I'm like, what do you want?
Welcome to free agency in the NFL.
It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, every remotely good quarterback gets extended.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Josh Allen's not available for a reason.
I'm just like, what do you want me to say? And that's exactly why Kirk Cousins has got the bag throughout his career, is because he's always been good enough. And then for a lot of weird reasons and just crazy reasons, he's breached free agency and he's gotten paid handsomely every single time. Shout out to Kirk Cousins, man.
He's figured it out. He figured out the loophole, and he's abused it to perfection.
I told you, man, I will much rather be overpaid than underrated. I want to be overpaid in every aspect of my life and career.
That's a solid way to look at life.
There you go. If I ever get a contract or get paid and someone's like, why is he getting paid that much? That is too much. I have made it.
So we've got a lot of more Colts talk coming up in about 30 minutes or something. We're going to talk to Nate Atkins, so we'll get his thoughts there. James went suit shopping for Tony East's wedding. That we got to get into that later.
Your boy is going to be dapper on Saturday.
All right, we got to get into that. Also, busy night in hoops. Pacers fell to the Knicks. IU shockingly was the best team of the night. They pulled out a victory there, and Purdue fell to Michigan. So we'll get into all that, but coming up next, we'll talk a little more hoops on that side. Benedict Mathurin going to the bench. The Pacers are going to start mixing up the lineup even more going forward and all that stuff. Got plenty to get into. It's the Fan Morning Show. It's a Wednesday. Mark Dykton, James White, Kevin Bowen off to jury duty. We'll see how that goes. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. on Pascal Siakam's playlist, but he is going to be at the All-Star game this weekend, so maybe he'll hear it. I don't know if this is on his workout music though.
I don't know. Pascal
He's a fan
strikes
of
me
Shrek,
as a very peculiar guy. He's into a lot of different things, and so
Maybe he's a fan of the Shrek movie then. This is heavily featured in those movies, James. So
it is a classic. That's the only thing I think of whenever I hear that song.
So unsurprisingly, we did an Indiana parlay yesterday, or at least I did. It died a quick death once again. I thought Purdue was probably going to be the one team that wouldn't have let me down last night. Instead, they were the first team to let me down. The Pacers followed suit after that when they fell to the Knicks. And then IU, remarkably, they ended up winning last night. And I at least I needed the plus 11. That covered, but they got the outright win, which that would have paid pretty handsomely, quite honestly, if you would have taken Indiana on the money line there. But unsurprisingly, the Indiana parlay died a quick death. Mike Woodson, this whole saga with, the end is near and everything like that, I'm kind of ready for it to just be over with at this point. Like, I don't get upset with, pre and post game interviews and stuff like that. But if you're not even going to give Don Fisher your time,
Legend.
I mean, Don Fisher, no offense to Don Fisher or anything like that, but it's not like he's going to ask you the hard-hitting questions. Like, he's going to give you the softballs if you're Mike Woodson.
Yeah.
He's going to ask you about the game.
You're
He's
on
not,
the same side.
Right. He's not going to, corner you with some tough questions or anything like that. So the fact that even Don Fisher's not getting the time of day from Mike Woodson at this point, it's kind of like, what are we doing? Like you are still the head coach right now. Like, I know you're not going to be in a little bit, but as of now, you are still the head coach. You are the face of the IU basketball program.
Yes.
You should still have to do the duties that you were originally hired to do, and that means meeting with media, answering questions, and that you are paid handsomely. If you can't even do that duty, then what are we doing? Why are you still here? Why don't you just resign outright, and we'll just have one of the assistant coaches take over for the remainder of the season?
That's the weird part for me. I'm like, well, just do it now then. Like, get rid of him now.
Yeah.
And obviously, after last night's win, everyone's feeling a lot better about the state of the team. Not everyone as far as the fan base, but I mean, everyone within the team, coaches. You have to feel good after a win like that. I mean, I can't discredit you for going on the road and beating one of the best teams in the country. But I was watching the post-game video, and I'm like, where is the question about, hey, why are you leaving? Whose decision was it? Those types of things that we just haven't got answers to. And I understand from a certain aspects, it's like you don't want to ruffle too many feathers as a media member, especially with college athletics. Their rules are not really rules.
Mm-hmm.
The schools kind of decide what flies and what's not. Because I can tell you right now, if he were trying to pull this stuff with an NBA team or an NFL team, everyone would just laugh and say no.
And
the league would step in and be like, no, you're going to talk.
Yeah, you'd be getting fined like crazy if you were.
Exactly. And so I just don't see the incentive to kind of dance around a very obvious thing. Just make a statement, get it out the way, and then move on. But to not really speak on it is weird. But to get back to the actual game itself, I thought that this was obviously one of the best games they played all season. The lineup change that Kevin Boles was talking about in the first hour, it looked like it worked. And then Malik Renew, credit to him, comes off the bench, not pouting at all, and goes and does work. And quick story, when I was growing up, played basketball with my dad on Saturdays and played a lot of, I guess, old school style. And we had a guy we played with, and his nickname was Old School, and he would, throw a lot of jump hooks and stuff. And he'd get you in the post, he call it metal lock. Like, you're locked down. Can't do nothing with this hook shot. And that's what it looked like with Malik Renew. Metal lock, give me the ball, I'm going over his right shoulder, and I'm going to score every time. And then credit to them for really hanging on at the end, because Michigan State did put some pressure on them, forced them to make some free throws, and they stood up there, I know, and knocked them down. And so that was just a big, big game from IU. And shout out to also Trey Galloway for making some free throws too. I mean, he looked like he was not a 60% shooter. He nailed them.
Yeah, it was good to see. It was a nice win. It's nice. It's kind of like when you see a lineup change and it works, you're like, well, why haven't we been doing that a little bit longer and everything like that? But, Mike Woodson's going to do Mike Woodson at this point and everything like that. But, yeah, good win for the Hoosiers. I say it is their best win of the season, which is not saying much considering the way the season has gone. But now you got UCLA coming up on Valentine's Day, and then, oh, boy, here who's around the corner. But Purdue, and obviously Purdue last night with Matt Painter and crew, had a rough one against Michigan. Michigan just beating the brakes off both Indiana teams as of late and everything like that. But A rough night for Purdue. I don't think it's a gargantuan loss by any means. It was a tough opponent and everything like that. But they were in it to the very end, just didn't have shots go their way, and obviously got no help from their bench in that regard, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, to see some of the shot attempts and just an overall lack of production from this bench. I mean, I'm looking at their bench and 0 points. Is that correct?
Yeah, 0 points. Yeah.
Like, that is
literally
rough.
No contribution from the bench.
That's rough. And then you look at how.
And that's with Heidi with 17 minutes and everything like that. But
exactly.
A big offer on the field goals.
And then I thought that they just ran out of bodies when it came to the paint. And that's where, obviously, you'd miss Zach Edey the most because although the Boilermakers still have a lot of talent on their roster, Trey Kaufman ran and Caleb First, who I actually covered Caleb First for one game in high school, and he was amazing at Blackhawk Christian, I believe, is a school. But they were a bit undersized dealing with Michigan size, and it seemed like every big rebound down the stretch, they could just never get to it. And then in return, you're fouling and you're kind of standing in the game, and Braden Smith had his heroics, but you needed one more guy to kind of come with him to get you over the top. And obviously, like I said, 2 of your top guys weren't available because they were fouled out. But, I mean, this isn't a loss where you're panicking, but I do think that it speaks to perhaps what could plague this team going forward. It's like you need that bench production to win some big games, obviously in the Big Ten tournament, and then obviously the NCAA tournament where you want to go on another run. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. It's one game. Things can change, and they've played better this year, obviously. But, man, I was thinking if you just get a modicum. I mean, it's a 2-point loss, and you got 0 points from your bench.
I know. If you would have just gotten a little bit of something, that game could have totally been a different result. But, yeah, Purdue sees their 4-game winning streak snapped by Michigan. Now they got some interesting ones. This was kind of the first of the big three as far as I'm concerned on the schedule. They got Wisconsin on Saturday. They got Michigan State next week. And then they've got at Indiana later in the month. So some interesting next 3 games for Purdue. We'll see what they do there. But as far as their like March Madness, ceiling, obviously they got to the national championship last year, so that is going to be a hard goal to meet once again, especially without Zach Edey. I still think they can go pretty deep into the second weekend. I don't know how much further they can go after that, but Matt Painter has just found a way to have his team adapt season in and season out, no matter who's on the floor for him. He seems to get the best out of those players, and Braden Smith has obviously stepped it up this season as well. So I don't know where you're at as far as Purdue's ceiling, but I could see a deep second weekend run in them.
So I am currently watching on my laptop a Braden Smith ankle breaker.
Ooh.
When he just cooked Danny Wolf to cut it to another one-possession game late and pulled up for a 3. I look at that and I'm like, that guy right there is the reason why I believe they can go on a run.
Yep.
Like, he's that good. It is so refreshing to see a guy stay in college. Obviously, I don't think that Braden Smith was like some, super high on NBA draft board. So he came back to school, smart decision, whatever. But it feels kind of like an old school vibe where this guy came, he, was trusted, he grew up, he messed up early, now he's leading the charge. And the beard, I think, helps. He looks like a grown man out there, the lumberjack vibe. And he can absolutely boogie, as, my dad would say. So I'm just curious to see what he can do when it matters the most and how he can lead this team. Because it looks like in the big moments, and I know they lost last night, he still doesn't get rattled. Like, he can still get a good shot off. He can still run your offense. And so, play here, play there, they're probably winning the game. No moral victories, obviously. But, again, I think Braden Smith is a unanimous first-team All-American. And because of that, and him being a guard who initiates your offense and kind of runs things, there's a chance that you can still do something special with him. And so it's exciting to see a guy, too, who's kind of like that homegrown talent, underrated guy, and see him, become what he's become. Because, my goodness gracious, I'm watching this crossover. And knowing how petty I am, if I was on the Michigan beat, even after especially after you win, I always ask the guys about, getting embarrassed. I did it with Tyrese Halliburton when I was on the Pacers beat. It's like, okay, you won, but we also saw you get dunked on or something. So let's address this because we're all thinking it anyways. And so I think it's one of those things where everyone enjoys acknowledging that you just get got sometimes.
Well, speaking of embarrassed, I would say that would be the Pacers last night, 128-115 losers to the Knicks. They had zero answers for Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, they could not stop them. They stopped literally like everyone else on the Knicks except those two guys, and those two guys just had their way with them. Karl Anthony Towns, 40 points, 12 rebounds last night. Josh Hart, 30 points and 10 boards. So they got smoked by those two guys alone on New York last night. And it was kind of like, it was weird to see the Pacers just kind of get out hustled. I saw Tyrese Halliburton did like a sideline interview, and I forget who the sideline reporter was, but she asked him, is it weird that they're out hustling you on your court? And he kind of like brushed it off and everything, but it's like, that's exactly what's happening. Like they are playing with that faster pace that we're used to seeing with the Pacers, and that kind of put opposing teams on their heels. And instead it was the Pacers that were on the back of their heels because they could not have any answers for those two guys last night. So not a good night there. I don't know if you saw also, did you see that this is a random side note from the Pacers. Did you see that Alex Lynn changed course and is signed with the Lakers now? He's kind of spurred the Pacers and decided to go out west with LeBron and Doncic now.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it just sets up the Pacers-Lakers final,
Even
the
more?
2000s rematch even more. But it makes sense. I get it. I mean, if you're a big man, who wouldn't want to play with Luka and LeBron because they're going to make your life
you got the option. I mean,
easier.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how, for those who are really into basketball, Chris Paul elevated pretty much every big man that he had early in his career. I remember when he got with Tyson Chandler. Tyson Chandler's a good player, but he was a great player with Chris Paul. And so I understand it. And then obviously we know with the Pacers, Miles will be back. He's not, going to miss the season or something like that. So it was very clearly a number 3 spot behind Miles and Thomas Bryant, who could have really used Miles last night. That's another reason why I thought Karl Anthony Towns went off. He's a great player. He can do that against anyone. He scored 62, I believe, last year in a game. Or actually, it might have been 64. But one of those things is you need size. And I felt like they just really missed that last night. Shout out to Jahlil Okafor, though, for getting back in the NBA after, a years-long absence.
That's one where I saw the name. And I'm like, is there another Jahlil Okafor? Am I thinking of the wrong person? But no.
I saw him play in high school. When I was a junior in high school, we're actually the same age, same class. Not to say I was a 5-star recruit or anything because I was a negative star recruit, but to see him kind of persevere, get back to the NBA was really cool. But on the Pacers side of things, it's like, if we got to rely on this guy, it might be in for a long night. And I mean, if I told you yesterday, Mark, hey, they're going to hold Jalen Brunson, one of the NBA's best scorers, to 8 points. He's going to have 5 fouls in, 3 quarters and barely play. You probably take that, right? I mean,
you would assume that game would have ended a little bit differently. Yeah, but they didn't account for 2 other guys on that team at all. So interesting there. No Miles Turner last night, but the Pacers did go deep. The only guy who didn't get minutes on the bench was James Johnson. Everyone else got some run at some point in that game, so that was interesting to see. Benedict Mathurin off the bench, I think I agree with Rick Carlisle. We obviously had him on yesterday. He didn't answer the lineup change question. I don't expect that he would have. But I'm actually okay with Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench. Like, unless, obviously the foul trouble kind of changed his direction, everything like that. But if you can get a guy like Mathurin coming off the bench consistently for you, I think his energy and just what he brings to the table, off the bench can kind of fuel that kind of, when you do start relying on the bench over the starting roster, he can add some nice fire and everything like that. So I'm okay with Benedict Mathurin. I know a lot of people were hoping he would crack the lineup more often in the starting rotation, everything like that. I'm totally fine him being like a 6th man candidate.
Yeah, and I think he can be who he is a lot easier maybe with that second unit just because he's a scorer at heart.
Yeah.
He's an attack guy. And so sometimes when you're alongside Halliburton and you're alongside Siakam, you might not be able to get the same amount of touches or be the same level of aggressor. And I don't think that's something that's going to hinder him because when you close games late, you probably want to have Benedict Mathurin in there in some of these games. But I do think it can kind of jumpstart the second unit. Like Rick Carlisle alluded to, it's just that everything kind of went sideways when Aaron Neeson's got in foul trouble, and you just weren't able to really probably stick to whatever rotations or plans that you had. And it goes back to this team not being able to defend at all. And that's the thing that probably was most frustrating. I get it, Miles was out, but you knew that. It wasn't like it happened in the first quarter. You were game planning, you were prepared, or you were supposed to be. And to see the same mistakes happen over and over again was rough. And I will say, when it comes to the officiating, there were definitely some questionable, calls there. But I think overall, you cannot blame the officials for how things turned out last night. They're not the ones leaving Josh Hart open every single time on the baseline. I'm like, did he buy real estate, at Gainbridge Fieldhouse? Did he move in down underneath the basket? And so those are the hustle plays and moments where I thought they just kind of unraveled a bit and weren't themselves. And last point I'll make is with Tyrese, there's moments where I just wonder, can you just grab the game by the wheel and get it done? I know it's not his nature. He's a pass-first guy. But I'm watching some of these other players take over games. I'm like, that's the Tyrese that I feel like we still haven't really seen this year. He's had some really good games. He's actually had a really good season outside of the first, 15, 20 games. Now he's kind of playing back to that level that we know him to be as an all-star caliber player. But even last night, there were just moments and stretches where I'm like, where's Tyrese?
Yeah.
Like, things are kind of going sideways. Where's our guy?
For being such a highly compensated player and obviously the face of the franchise, he does kind of get lost in the shuffle a lot more than I expect a player of that caliber to do. Like, you don't ever notice, like, when you're looking at the court, you're not like, where's LeBron at? Where's Steph Curry at? But Tyrese, there's times where you're like, is he playing right now? Where's he at? Like, he comes off as literally very passive at times, where he never really throws the game on his back and is like, watch this, like, I got this under control, guys. Like, take it from me, follow my lead. He kind of does hand it off and everything like that. And I mean, that's his nature to do, but also sometimes you do want to see him just kind of like get aggressive and like, okay, I got this. Like, if we can't get it done, I'm going to take care of it. And it's just like, you haven't seen that too much. And I don't know if that's a situation that, he's kind of fallen himself into. But I mean, there was an article we had on, I forget who it was now. I'm not going to do it justice, but he talked about how Tyrese early in the season had kind of heard, like, he fell into like the social media wormhole of hearing the criticisms of how he wasn't really being a leader, not really performing well and stuff like that. And then he eventually wiped the social media and started getting back to his roots, and he started getting more aggressive. And then kind of at the end of this West Coast trip, and then last night, he's kind of got lost in the shuffle again. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. He's lots of peaks and valleys for Tyrese this season.
So that name you're looking for, because I actually read this story. It was Jared Weiss and Sam Amick from The Athletic, my coworker. Shout out to those guys. But the good news is, you have a back-to-back against the lowly Wizards, who are awful.
They are awful. They also have Chris Middleton now that has,
I know.
Give some people some fits.
Shout out to Chris Middleton, man. Won a championship and then gets shipped to Siberia, which is basically
NBA Siberia.
Yeah, I'm like, this is like, talked about jail earlier, Corbin. That is NBA jail right there. Them and the Hornets, I understand, at least from the Wizards' perspective, they're stockpiling picks and they're making some good moves. It's just going to look bad now. But just from a product standpoint, very unserious basketball team.
Well, you want to talk unserious? You see the Bulls last night? They were down 42 points at halftime.
They're a disgrace. Like, don't get me started. I'm from the Chicago area.
I know.
And
me too.
I say this all the time. Bulls fans should thank God Almighty that Michael Jordan was drafted there. And he won 6 championships there. Not to take away from Michael Jordan, because he is the GOAT. But when it comes to relevancy outside of him, there was a Derrick Rose era, and
they looked into that too.
Yeah, I mean, they had a less than 1% chance to get number one pick, and they get Derrick Rose. And after that, but what have they ever had to be happy about?
Nothing.
And so,
well, that's why I joked about it last night. The Bulls put on their Twitter account, they put out the halftime score, and they were down like 42 points. And I said, for all those IU fans that are clamoring for Billy Donovan to be on that short list for coaching candidates, I think Chicago Bulls fans would ship him to Bloomington. They would drive him there personally after last night. They'd be like, you can have him.
They definitely
You don't need to give us any compensation.
What a directionless team. But when it gets to the Pacers and going back to that Wizards game, this is an opportunity. End it on a high note. Get into the break relatively healthy. And again, if you're a serious team, if you're a team that went to the conference finals last year, you want to make sure you're not in the play-in. You want to make sure that you're playing your best basketball when the playoffs roll around and you're not 2/3 through the season. You can't lose this, 3 in a row and your last loss be against a team as bad as the Wizards.
No.
So
this is the get-right game.
Yeah, back-to-back, changing time zones. They're rested. Don't care at all. You're better. Go out there and prove it.
Get a win. Yeah, it's disappointing that the last 2 games had been nationally televised and the Pacers just didn't really show up at all for the Lakers game or last night against the Knicks. Get right against the Wizards for the love of God. That is tonight. We'll get into that. But we've got Nate Atkins coming up on the other side. Before all that, though, we've got a morning check down to get into. All right, James, we were just talking Pacers, but we'll continue that real quick. Not a good night for the Pacers. 128-115 losers again. They just got dominated by Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns. 70 points and 22 boards combined between those two men last night. No Miles Turner. Tyrese Halliburton was a bit passive, and Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench, though, scored 18 points. That was nice to see. But other than that, not a very good night if you were a Pacers fan.
Not at all. But if you're looking for a positive, Ben Shepherd, solid game, 4 of 5, 2 threes, +4. Looking at this list of players, there weren't many people that were positives in yesterday's game. So, as we just talked about, get right against Washington and then go into the break and enjoy it. And I would like to know, on a quick tangent, if players, because we know the All-Star game is terrible. This year's like some kind of weird tournament, whatever.
Yep.
I will not be, subscribing to that. I don't care about it at all. It was bad last year, and I was there in person. But would you rather just do you think a guy like Trae Young, who gets that call, like, all right, you're an all-star, wants to go?
Or do you just want his vacation plans?
Or do you just want the accolade? Like, if you could just, like the Pro Bowl, where it's like, I get the accolade, but I don't have to go.
Yeah.
Do you think NBA players like opt out?
That's a good point. Especially this late in the game, too. You're probably like, man, I already had plans, man. I don't want to do that. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'd be disappointed if I was Trae Young. Like, wait, I have to play now?
It's like, what? And then they have so much media stuff they have to do. I didn't realize that until I covered, a All-Star game here last year. They have so much stuff to do.
So much.
So, I think that I would be like, maybe I got a little sniffle, and I can't make it. So just give me the accolade, make sure it shows up on Wikipedia or basketballreference.com, and I'm good.
All right, so the Pacers have one last game before the All-Star break. That is tonight at Washington against the Wizards. Coverage starts right here on the Fan at 6:30. Tip-off at 7. College hoops last night. Indiana shocked number 11 Michigan State, 71-67. That was good to see from them. Purdue fell to number 20 Michigan, 75-73. Came up just short. No help from the bench, unfortunately. Matt Painter talked about the lack of bench help last night.
They took a bunch of shots. I think it makes more sense. They didn't take a bunch of shots. So, if they're going to, you want your best scorers to shoot the most, right?
Yeah, that's right. You would like your best scorers to shoot. So, Purdue will get back on the court on Saturday when they host Wisconsin, while the Hoosiers get back on the court on Valentine's Day and they host UCLA. Coming up next, we've got Nate Atkins of the Indianapolis Star. We're going to talk some Colts with him. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, and Corbin Lingenfelter in the studio. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Corbin with the tunes this morning.
It was on the Smash Mouth Greatest Hits album, I think.
I know. Of course, I'm James Boyd.
Or Shrek
joined,
3.
Yeah, it's true. But of course, I'm James Boyd, joined by Mark Dykton and Corbin on the ones and twos. You listen to the morning show, the Fan Morning Show, here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. And, we're short one guy, Kevin Bond, because he's in jury duty.
Mm-hmm.
He's said he'd be back. We all told him he was nuts.
Yeah, he's not going to do that.
So I just would not, agree with how he envisioned his jury duty going.
Now, I've never done jury duty. You have?
I have not.
You have not either.
But everything Corbin tells me scares me to make me think it's going to be a very long process. So to that, I say, Kevin, I will see you next year.
Yeah. Well, Kevin thinking he was going to be back in the time span that we're still on the air. I was like, Kevin, I've never done jury duty. I think it's a bit bold to assume. So I don't know.
Very, very bold.
Has our next guest had jury duty?
Let's ask him. So our next guest, we have Nate Atkins from Indy Star, covers the Colts. I see him often. Nate, have you ever done jury duty?
I've not done jury duty, but the funny thing is I got called for it back in my parents' hometown, which I haven't lived in about a decade. So they were convinced I still lived there. So they were trying to make me come and back to Ohio and serve jury duty. And I said, I don't live there, so I'm not going to be there. So I got out of it somehow.
So all I heard was that Nate Atkins has an active warrant for his arrest in the state of Ohio.
You can't cross state lines.
Right. You never know. Maybe they don't believe me.
Aside from us having beef, we have beef, by the way, me and Nate, over, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. It's a long story. I am sadly Team Rudy, and I'm getting beat down as far as who's the better player at this point in their careers.
I'm surprised you brought that up after this week.
I know. It's rough. It's a rough morning, Nate.
So James is Drake in this beef right now? You're
getting
torched?
I'm getting beat down. Yeah, I don't know if Donovan Mitchell has any diss tracks for Rudy Gobert, who single-handedly ended the NBA season way back when. But
I look forward to Nate Atkins' halftime show to the next year's Super Bowl.
Exactly. But moving on to more important things and the thing that you actually get paid to cover related to the Colts, Nate, I want to start here. We'll talk to Chris Ballard in a couple weeks at the Combine, and of course, all of us will have bigger picture offseason questions. So, when you think about your list of what things you want to pick his brain about, what stands out to you about his process and perhaps what needs to change about his offseason process to make sure this franchise gets back to the playoffs the first time since 2020?
Hey, we obviously got to talk to Chris after the season, and he kind of went on and on and on and in depth about how he felt like this is time to change his ways, and he's been very dug in on his ways in the past. So it was a little similar in some ways in the way that he takes the blame after a season's disappointing, but different in the ways that he talked about how those processes, those ways, those priorities, those principles all need to be different and we're wrong. Every time that I do a mailbag every week, and every single week I'll get multiple questions of people asking, will Chris Ballard actually change? Will he actually follow through on his words? Or is this an issue where there's certain, regret and feelings that pop up in January that don't follow through once he sees the price tags and gets into bidding wars in March? So that's the big question to kind of follow up on. And I don't know that we're going to know that for sure until action actually comes through and answers that for us. But that was I tried to dig in on that a little bit to see just how much he was willing to promise or guarantee after the season. And of course, he says they haven't looked that far into it. By the Combine, they're going to have a plan of what they want to try to do in free agency versus the draft class. That's kind of the way that teams do it, is they're scouting the positions that year coming out of the draft versus what they should go toward in free agency. And so far, the Colts have taken a backward approach, I think, to what a lot of contenders do, which is when they have a need they absolutely have to fill, they look to free agency first and then to the draft. They don't just count on the rookie. The Colts have tried to do it the other way around or just promote people up. So I'm curious to hear if Chris Ballard's willing to take this a step further and give us real belief that he's going to actually go out and sign free agents. Because he talks a lot about adding competition, a big thing that a lot of players on defense said they didn't have. And what I'm really curious to find out is, does he want to actually add competition, guys who will take jobs, or is he just looking to add depth, guys who can step in if someone else goes down or someone else isn't getting the job done. Because to me, there's a big difference in that the talent level of this team needs to be a lot better, and it's not just going to happen through depth and the draft. And so we'll see if we get any indication from Chris Ballard whether they're actually going to change that or if it's just going to be minor tweaks.
He's Nate Atkins of the Indy Star. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline, talking a bit of Colts on this Wednesday morning. Nate, you just talked about free agency versus the draft. If I gave you one position group that you want to see Chris Ballard address in free agency as opposed to the draft, it would be what?
The secondary for sure, and especially safety, I think, to narrow it down even more. Right now, when I look at that secondary, that they rolled back from last year. They essentially rolled it back from the year before. You take it back to 2022. They had Stephon Gilmore requested a trade, so they lost their top corner that way. Isaiah Rodgers then gets suspended for the season, and then they release him. And their replacements from those two positions ever since that moment 2 years ago were Juju Brents as a second-round pick who hasn't stayed healthy, and then it's been seventh-round pick Jalen Jones, waiver claim on Sam Womack, and then an experiment with Dallas Flowers. That's been it. That's been all they have put into one of the premium positions on defense in a spot that ends up defining whether or not you can hang with some of these teams in the AFC. And you just watch the Eagles went out and they drafted two corners back-to-back, outside corners or cornerbacks, first and second round picks. So the draft can help you with that, but especially at safety, I think that's where something's got to change with a new veteran in here. If they just roll it back, Julian Blackmon has been a good player, but he hasn't been healthy enough to be that impact player that we saw in moments in 2023 and then in training camp this past year as a strong safety. They really need a free safety. If you look at Louis Anarumo, the new defensive coordinator, when his defense has thrived in Cincinnati is when they had Jesse Bates just running things on the back end and a safety and Von Bell that they could switch and rotate. Post snap, one would be the single high safety, and one would come down the box, and they would rotate doing that. I don't think they have anybody who can really do that right now. Nick Cross is pretty good close to the ball, but not deep and in space. And then, like I said, Julian Blackmon just hasn't stayed healthy enough to be that type of player. So free safety, especially as a position, especially as much of a communicator as he has to be, as cerebral as he has to be to handle that spot. Louis Anarumo's defense is built from the back to the front, and so that's the spot I think they really need to take a swing on and go get a guy who can help define the scheme on the back end, because when you look at the secondary as a whole, the only guy you would feel really good about right now is difference maker as a no doubt. He's going to get the job done is Kenny Moore, and that's a nickel corner, which is the least important position of the five on the back end. So free safety, especially to me, is the clear spot where they need to go get a free agent.
I think I'm going to snitch to Kenny and tell him that Nate said his job isn't important. That's what I'm going to do to get in his good graces. So when I get all my, inside information, my one-on-one exclusive, that's going to be the lead of my story. Let you know, Nate.
I don't agree with this spin, but
well, no, Nate, I know you mentioned in all seriousness the need to add more talent, add more competition. And we know that Chris Ballard also talked about that at the quarterback position, the most premium position in the sport. So put you on the spot here a little bit. You got to bring in somebody. So when I say these names, Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Jameis Winston, dare I say Aaron Rodgers, who are you bringing in to add to that quarterback room and put some fire underneath Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, I like those first two names a lot better than the other two. So
Jameis, you don't want Jameis talking about like gumbo and throwing out, W-shaped cookies at the Super Bowl?
As a reporter, that's gold. That's quote gold.
That's what I'm
right
saying,
there.
man.
Oh, it would be funny. It would be very funny. The Colts have had interest in Jameis before, so I'm not going to rule that one out. But for the way that they describe what they want in that position, obviously they want someone who can push Anthony Richardson, but they also want someone who can step in and do some of the things he does when he misses time, since he's had 4 injuries in 2 seasons costing him games. And so you think about the mobile quarterbacks, the guy you trust to come in and run the read option and some quarterback design runs. That's Daniel Jones and that's Justin Fields, I'm very curious to see what the Steelers do, because that seems entirely in their hands as far as whether they go for Russell Wilson again or if they want to move off to Justin Fields. But Daniel Jones is the one that we know will be available. So if you had to put some odds on it, I think he's going to be the most likely to come in here. It's also a guy, either him or Fields, I think can look at this situation and think that they'll come in and not as the number one, but they have a chance to become the number one either through an injury that lets them step in or just by winning that competition if Anthony Richardson doesn't make improvements in the offseason and doesn't bring it on a day-to-day basis. But that's also the other thing about it is they need somebody who's going to really, really grind at this on an every moment basis during the week. And, I would bet – I think you can bet on Daniel Jones to do that. You can bet on Justin Fields to do that. Maybe you can bet on Jameis Winston to do that. I would not bet on Aaron Rodgers to do that part. And so if you're going to set up a competition of like the people you want in here to really raise the bar for Anthony Richardson, that changes the conversation too. And so between the mobility and just the fact that some of these guys have been first-round picks and handled that scrutiny and for however Justin Fields and Daniel Jones have failed, everything you hear is that they bring it every day and every moment. That's the kind of push they need on Anthony Richardson, is someone who isn't just here to be a distant backup to him, but someone that could take his job if he doesn't make those improvements, but also can do things from a mobility standpoint that he does, so that when they're moving offenses, from one quarterback to the next, they're not completely changing everything. That's what happened this past year, where it went from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco back to Anthony Richardson, and the offense never found an identity and it never found a flow, and they didn't really tap into the dual threat nature of their backfield until way late in the season against the Titans, and by then they'd already lost the Broncos, and it was pretty much a wrap on their season. And so they've got to be able to build that from day one out. And so getting a mobile quarterback, I think, is pretty essential.
Is there any world where Anthony Richardson is not the starting quarterback going into 2025? Like, can this competition be legitimate competition in the offseason where someone could actually take his job?
Not without an injury, because if that were to actually happen, that he couldn't hold on to the job through the offseason, it would invalidate to me the entire reason that you brought everybody back, which was to see this thing through. This is the most important offseason Anthony Richardson will ever have, and it's probably true that they'll know exactly what a lot of where he's come by training camp. But man, it would just throw a wrench in everything for him to not have taken that seriously in the offseason enough to get there. At least through like the training camp portion of it. So I think at the very least he's going to get the first month plus of the season, if he's healthy, to actually go into games and show the improvements he's made or not made before they were to do anything different. But also I know, James, covering this franchise, you can never put a certainty on anything with the quarterback position, because a year ago I would have said there's no way that they ever bench Anthony Richardson, and then we know what happened after that.
He's a scofflaw in the state of Ohio. He is Nate Atkins of the Indianapolis Star. He's avoiding jury duty quite well. He's got the one-up on James when it comes to NBA careers, everything like that. Nate, we appreciate the time. We'll see you around the Combine, all right?
All right, appreciate it. We'll see what I can what kind of smack talk I have by then about Donovan Mitchell for James, but it'll be fun.
He is Kendrick Lamar. He's not taking any pressure. He's not letting you rest. There's no rest for Nate Atkins there. So he joins us right there. Thank you, Nate Atkins, Indianapolis Stars, where you can find his work there. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, there's something this upset Kevin yesterday. It might make his head explode today. I'll tell you what it is on the other side. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, Corbin Lingenfelter on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Smash Mouth, so I think we're switching it off of the Shrek soundtrack at the moment from Corbin's playlist. But this is the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, Corbin Lingenfelter in studio. Kevin currently off at jury duty. He thinks he's going to be back in the next hour and 15 minutes. I find that impossible. So he probably doesn't have his phone on him at this point.
Or does he? Is he going to jail because he has his phone on him?
We might get that one phone call, and it could be Kevin Bowen asking us to bail him out or something. I know. So there's one thing, though, that whenever Kevin hears this show, which might be months from now when he gets out of the murder for hire trial that he probably will get put on later today, he was all up in arms yesterday regarding Jalen Hurts being at Disney World. You called him the Grinch.
Yes.
Other people said he was just a hater of Disney World and all things Disney. He is young children. There's no way he's a hater of Disney. I know that for a fact that he is locked in that stuff. He will eventually make his maiden voyage to Disney World, and it'll be in the near future because of his children. But Kevin Bone was just like blown away that we still do this thing in 2025 of the Super Bowl MVP being at Disney World hours after winning the Super Bowl. And I said, well, obviously that's a tradition. They've done that forever. They've done it since back in Phil Simms' era and everything like that back in the mid-'80s. So he's still blown away that they did this. So I can only imagine what might have gone through Kevin Bowen's mind yesterday when I see a Lane Johnson tweet come up, and it's Lane Johnson and a bunch of other players from the Philadelphia Eagles, including Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, at the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon to be on the show to celebrate that. So Kevin's head had to have exploded because Jalen Hurts went from being in New Orleans, winning the Super Bowl MVP, then going to Orlando, Florida for Disney World and riding all the attractions and high-fiving Mickey Mouse and that, and then going from Orlando, Florida to New York City to be on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. So that is quite the trek around the world right now that you're going nationwide from New Orleans to Florida to New York City in a matter of hours. Like, you don't sleep once you win the Super Bowl, man.
No.
You're not going to get any rest of the weekend because they have their Super Bowl parade on Friday. You know that's going to be a wild time in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts and everything like that. So Jalen Hurts not getting any sleep these next 96 hours.
Not at all. Did you see the video of Saquon Barkley getting back to Philly?
No.
Like they had him on a cart, he had the hoodie up, pulled down, and he looked like he was hurting.
Oh, yeah.
He probably had a great, great time, and he's paying for it now. But as you mentioned, once you win a Super Bowl, it's so weird to me because as a reporter, from my perspective, it's such a huge moment, right? You want to get all the details. You want to get all the insight. You want to take people behind the scenes. You know, what does it mean? Contextualize everything. And then you kind of look up, and it's like, oh, yeah, that happened. And everyone kind of moved on. Not in the sense of we don't respect the champions. It's just that it becomes like this kind of like, I don't know, like it's like a dog and pony show or something like that. That's the term. Like it's like, oh, let me trot out the Super Bowl MVP at some random show my mom watches. And I'm like, what is he doing on like Good Morning America or like The View or something like that? It's like you make all your media rounds, which is probably just good PR to get out there and make all your money. I love the Jordan commercial they had after it dropped. I don't know if you saw that where it's like Love Hurts.
Yep.
That was pretty solid. I love that.
Skivvies, who chimes in quite a bit on Twitter on our show. I don't know if this is a legit quote, but he said Saquon was on the Tonight Show yesterday, and he said, quote, Marshall Faulk is one of my favorite players, and he played for the Colts, but is remembered as a Ram. I want to be remembered as an Eagle. Like we're putting the Colts in the same category as the Giants. That's not company you want to be in right now. But that's a hell of a quote if that's true.
Not at all. And I mean, Saquon, I do know this is true. When Jameis asked, who needs a quarterback or where he should play, he was like, well, the Giants need a quarterback. Mm-hmm. So he's taking his jabs at his former franchise. But I mean, Saquon just ended what is arguably the greatest running back season ever. So he can talk as much as he wants.
He can do whatever he wants.
He was phenomenal.
He's the king of that city.
To the moment where they didn't play him in Week 18, and I was thinking, wow, that's really going to stink if he doesn't get a shot at the record and the most rushing yards in a single season because they're trying to save him for a Super Bowl run that might not happen. And it's like you look up and it's like, well, you made all the right decisions. You sat him, you stayed healthy, and you go on and win it all. So, yeah, as far as Kevin being upset about Disney World, I mean, that's just, again, a Grinch, a hater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what? I respect it because as I always tell you all, only time I ever get irritated with haters is when you're not honest about why you hate.
Mm-hmm.
Just, if you're hating on Jalen Hurts because it's like, well, you made all this money, now you get a free trip to Disney World, and I got to pay for my family to go, I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
Hate all you want.
Yeah. Just be upfront about it.
There you go.
Be honest.
Honest haters are my favorites. Probably my best friends. Like all of you out there, if you're an honest hater, holla at your boy.
Yeah. So interesting time to be Jalen Hurts right now because he's getting whipped around the country with all these media obligations and whatnot there. But hey, you're Super Bowl MVP. You can rest in a few weeks and everything like that. But yeah, being a reporter after a team wins the Super Bowl, you got to be traveling all over the place too because you're trying to keep up with the team and everything.
You know
that.
what's weird though? I don't know how. Like, whenever I see the videos of people celebrating and they're drinking or smoking cigars, I'm just like, okay, how long does the media stay there?
I don't know.
Because I saw Zach Kiefer posting videos. Diana Rossini had some stuff, and Zach Rosenblatt, who also works for The Athletic, and others. And I'm like, how long do you stay there with your phone just out in their face?
I don't know.
And do they get some time to themselves? So maybe I'll have that experience one day covering this team. We'll see, but they have a long way to go.
They do.
But I do think that, on a more serious note, the way that Philly built their team is the vision that the Colts sort of have. Now, obviously, they have a lot, more talent and a better quarterback overall, but the dual threat quarterback, you have the high power running back, you try to build in the trenches. Those are the philosophies that the Colts have had. They just haven't been able to execute them to that degree or even come close to it. But I do think that should give you some semblance of hope where you're like, man, we got a few pieces. If we can just get Anthony to being I would just say a competent thrower in the NFL, maybe they're okay. And so we'll see. Obviously, a long road to go. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of changes to be made. But I look at that Philly offense, and I just couldn't help but think, like, this is what they envisioned. But, again, Jalen Hurts can make the throws. That is the biggest thing. Make the throws.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts, I don't know if you've seen his Super Bowl numbers, but in 2 Super Bowls, he's been phenomenal. Like, he's put, like, all this talk about Eli Manning being a first-ballot Hall of Famer and whatnot and everything like that. Like, compared Jalen Hurts' numbers to Eli Manning's, and, like, you would be like, wait, which guy's up for the Hall of Fame? Because Jalen Hurts' numbers in these big game situations is so much better than what Eli Manning's were. And Jalen Hurts in the early part of his career still, he's got plenty of work there. It will be interesting to see what the Eagles do as well. Kellen Moore named the Saints head coach yesterday. That is not surprising, but now all the head coaching vacancies have been filled in the NFL. But what do the Eagles do at offensive coordinator? Does Nick Sirianni go back to play calling? He relieved those duties to Kellen Moore before. Would he do it again, or will he, go back to his ways of being a play caller? He did say that at one point it was too much for him to handle the head coaching duties and the play calling, but now that he's a little more seasoned at the head coach position, will he fall back on it and calling plays? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But in regards to Kellen Moore and the Saints and the head coaching jobs being filled, of the offseason movers and shakers of the NFL, which head coach do you think will make the biggest impact on the new team that they're now coaching?
Ooh, good question. I'll go Ben Johnson, Chicago.
I would hope so.
I know you would hope so.
I would hope so.
And trust me, my uncle and my cousins back home in Chicago, they are all rooting for Ben Johnson to get it done. But I say that because you have a quarterback. I do believe that Caleb Williams is a talented young prospect. You can, I think on the surface, be like, man, the Bears had a rough season. They didn't make the playoffs. It was terrible. Caleb Williams, 20 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. And he was getting crushed every Sunday. So I think Ben Johnson, if they invest in their offensive line, they have the cap space to do so. They have some flexibility. They have some talent at the skill positions on their team. So I think that is probably, one of the better situations if you're a new head coach. I mean, Kellen Moore, they basically had to beg somebody to come take that job in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation in New Orleans. That is a job that you would hope you get a little bit more than one season to try to turn it around, because there is a lot of work ahead on the Saints as regard to the salary cap issue, what you're doing with Derek Carr, all that stuff there. Of the coaches that were hired, who has the least impact on their team? Because I'm going to go ahead and say it's Brian Schottenheimer of the Cowboys, because I just think they're about to be in salary cap hell, and I just don't know really what Jerry Jones is doing. The fan base is upset and everything like that. I don't know if Micah Parsons is going to stay on the team. There's a lot of questions out in Dallas that, apparently they're not listening. They seem to think that they're close. I think that they are fooling themselves if they think they're even in the running of the Eagles or the Commanders at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Another one I'll probably throw out there is just Liam Cohen, just because of the way. Yeah, that alone right there, I was like, whew, I don't know, man. That's like the first thing you're supposed to learn when you're going down there. But in all seriousness, he seems like a great guy. I would not expect him to turn it around, though, in Jacksonville, just because they've been so dysfunctional. It seems like their dysfunction starts with their owner, Shad Khan, who, had the weirdest process to even get to hiring Liam. It was we're going to keep our general manager. Oh, wait a second. We can't get any coaches with this general manager. We're going to fire him. Then, bring in Liam. He's going to help me get the general manager. It was just so much dysfunction.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, this is what other teams must think when, the Colts were going through the Jeff Saturday era, which, I hope to burn out of my memory at some point.
Nope. You'll never live that down. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the NFL season. We are officially in the NFL offseason now. Combine just a couple weeks away, and then free agency and all that starts and everything like that. On the other side, though, we're going to talk about Purdue. They came up short last night against Michigan. Bobby Rell joins us on the other side. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Fan Morning Show on this Wednesday morning. Mark Dykton, James Boyd Corbin, Lingenfelter on the ones and twos. It was a rough night for Purdue last night. Came up short against Michigan. To talk about it is the voice of Purdue basketball on the radio. Bobby Rell joins us right now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Bobby, good morning to you, sir. How you doing?
Good morning. I wish I was a little more, had an extra boost in my step from a nice road win last night, but unfortunately, the Boilers came up just a tad short, so not as enthused as I could be this morning, but overall doing pretty well.
So let's talk about the game last night. Obviously, they came up just a little bit short last night. One notable thing in the loss is the lack of bench help last night. Matt Painter talked about it post-game. Would you consider the lack of bench help a blip on the radar or a cause for concern when it comes to depth going into the tournament?
It's a good question. I think there's a little concern there, certainly, but this Purdue team, just the way they're structured, is going to be pretty top-heavy from a production standpoint, night in, night out. as far as Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Wren, kind of carrying the heavy load from a scoring standpoint, and that's kind of how they've been most of the season. So I don't think it's super stunning, and it's not like the bench took 15 shots and didn't score. Like, it was pretty low volume for them from that standpoint. But yeah, you still would like to get some more production from the bench, especially when you lose a close game like that. Obviously, every possession, every bucket mattered, and certainly would be nice for the bench to be able to come through on occasions and make some timely shots. But unfortunately, it didn't happen last night. But hopefully, that bench is able to learn from a poor performance and maybe improve and help out in some bigger games yet to come.
So, Bobby, James here, these guys here on the Fan, they know that I am a honest hater. So after things, there's some context here. But when things happen in the Purdue game, doesn't go your way, do you sit down and then go, okay, I need, does your hate of IU or just the rivalry in general, I don't know if it's hate, just rivalry, do you like, I don't want anything good to ever happen to them? Or are you sitting there like, you know what? A little help wouldn't hurt.
Oh, I was pulling for the Hoosiers all the way last night. There's no doubt about it.
I love it.
We were, on getting ready to get on the plane, and then once we were on the plane to fly back to Michigan, we were, bummed out, of course, about our loss. But then I was firing up the Hoosiers and the Spartans to see how that game was going to unfold, because even though we lost that game last night, our goals are still right there in front of us as far as trying to win the Big Ten. And if the Hoosiers were able to knock the Spartans down a peg, that was certainly going to be some help for us in the standings. And so I was pulling for the Hoosiers last night. It's not easy for me to do that typically. It's typically watching the Hoosiers and cheering for them to not do as well. But last night I was happy to see they were able to pull that out.
I love to see hate, unite like that, But jokes aside,
Exactly.
Bobby, when you talked about your goals being right in front of you with this team, obviously some lofty goals, and leading that charge is Braden Smith. I know just short last night, but again, for him to have those moments, make those shots, to have that poise, what type of confidence do you think that instills in this group that they can potentially win anywhere against anybody?
No doubt. I mean, I think this team has, and coaching staff has, a ton of confidence in Braden Smith. He's certainly now, over the course of his 3 seasons, has given nothing but confidence that he can perform on the biggest stage in the biggest games. And once again last night in a tough road game against a top 20 opponent, Braden delivered with another stellar performance, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, plays the whole game and is in incredible shape and does pretty much everything for this Purdue team. They put a lot on his shoulders, and I certainly think he's able to handle all that. Him and Fletcher Lawyer have started every game since they've been at Purdue, and those guys have won a ton in Purdue uniforms, and Braden just seems to be getting better and better as he gets more experience and more confidence. And last night started off really hot, then had a kind of a stretch where he wasn't able to score as effectively over the middle portion of the game, but then made some big plays down the stretch that gave us a chance to try to pull off that late game heroics.
He's Bobby Riddell. Bobby Buckets, the analyst on the call with Rob Blackman for Purdue basketball on the radio. Bobby, how would you describe the job Matt Painter has done in a season after losing Zach Edey? He's getting the most out of Braden Smith, all that. Seems like he's just able to adapt regardless of the talent on the roster, and he just gets the most out of all his players. What are your thoughts on the job he's done?
I think it's been a remarkable job by Coach this year. You're right. I think he does a remarkable job being able to, adapt to his personnel year in and year out. I think that's something he's now been able to prove over the course of his tenure with Purdue, that, he's going to not make wholesale changes to, Purdue's identity, but he's going to make tweaks from a scheme standpoint and from a usage standpoint offensively with certain players, depending on who he feels are his most effective players on the offensive end, and he's going to adjust the scheme accordingly to highlight the strengths of those players who he feels are going to be his most effective. And I think we're seeing that this year with Braden Smith, and Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Renn. Most of the actions Purdue runs are for them. And, even though Trey Kaufman-Renn is a very quality low post scorer, we don't just necessarily throw it into him all the time on the block consistently like we did with Zach Edey because Trey's a different player than Zach, not quite as dominant on the block. And so we like to use Trey in a little bit different ways as far as using his mobility on the perimeter, and him and Braden Smith have a different type of pick and roll connection than Braden and Zach had. And of course, we still design all kinds of actions for Braden Smith to, more isolation type actions for him this year when he gets advantageous matchups for him just to kind of cook his on-ball defender and make plays because we trust Braden to do that. That wasn't something that was done maybe as much last year because you had that dominant force in Zach Edey. And, we've seen Coach do that a lot, depending on whether he's got a dominant big or whether he's got more elite guards like a Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein a couple of years back where they shot so many threes. He's been great. And then defensively, of course, Zach's not back there anymore either, right? He's not there to be that huge inside presence to rim protect and deter people from driving to the basket. And so we've had to adjust our scheme defensively a little bit, be more aggressive, try to cause more turnovers. And that's been something that's really worked well this year in trying to create some offense from our defense.
I think it also just speaks to the trust that the players have in Matt Painter as a coach, because in the days of the NIL and transfer portal and all that, guys don't leave Purdue. Like, they come to Purdue and they stick around, and that's just something that obviously is not seen in a lot of college campuses and programs these days. You see guys jumping ship all over, but Matt Painter he figures it out with his guys, and his guys don't want to leave Matt Painter. They trust him and that he gets the best out of their abilities.
Completely agree. It's a testament to the culture Coach Painter has been able to build there over the last 20-odd years or so, and also a major credit to the staff that Coach Painter has been able to build around him. I'm around that coaching staff day in and day out when I travel with the team, and they're all really good guys, really hard workers. They all play such a big part in building that culture, the camaraderie within the whole team. And that's been just such a huge piece, I think, to why Purdue's been able to have this success and Coach Painter's been able to have this success for so long, is the culture is just really great. And I think when guys get in that, and obviously winning certainly cures a lot, and we've been able to win at a high level, it's just a kind of a infectious culture that you like to be around. It's kind of one of those work hard, play hard atmospheres, and it's a joy to be around.
Bobby, I'm always curious to know about when I cross paths with other people in media. When did you kind of know, okay, I want to stick around this and figure out whatever lane you wanted to continue it in? Because obviously playing basketball and then becoming a color analyst is not the simplest transition. So what kind of led you down that path, and how gratifying is it to be on the other side and maybe analyze it through a different view?
It's been really gratifying. There's no question. When you unfortunately have to stop being a college basketball player and don't get to, put that jersey on anymore, that's a tough transition because, basketball has been all for a long time, and you miss the camaraderie of being on a team and going on the plane rides and bus rides and being in a locker room and playing cool venues and all those sorts of things that are great about being a college basketball player. It definitely stinks when that's not a part of your life anymore. And that's how it was for me for a good chunk of years there after I graduated. But I was fortunate when the radio position became available that the Matt Painter and the staff thought highly enough of me to give me a crack at it. It was pretty neat that Rob Blackman, our play-by-play announcer, and Wes Scott, who's our radio engineer, both those guys were on the radio crew when I was a player. And so I kind of already had a pre-existing connection with them. And so that certainly made my transition much better to being on the radio call, because I didn't have any sort of radio media experience coming into the position. It certainly listened to games on the radio all the time and had a feel for, how the job went. And fortunately, Robbie Hummel, who was a former teammate of mine, was someone who, has done TV and radio as well for a while. He'd done it for a handful of years when I first started, and so I was able to use him as a resource and somebody that could give me advice, and that was really, really beneficial as I started out. And it's been neat to see it from a different lens for sure. Being able to travel with the team, that's been awesome because you do get some of that restored camaraderie that you miss out so much on when you're not a player or part of a team anymore. And so I've kind of been able to have a piece of that back, which has been great. And of course, with Coach Painter still the head coach and a number of other support staff and assistant coaches still there from when I played, it's been really fun to rekindle that. And obviously all the winning that we've been doing has certainly not hurt one bit either, because, getting to go to all these great venues and sit courtside for a lot of them and call these games, and a lot of them being Purdue wins. Of course, the great trip to the Final Four last year was an amazing experience, and definitely feel blessed to be able to be part of the radio staff.
So now all these guys can get paid. So do you ever think like, man, if I just put out some Bobby Bucket shirts, I got a little bit of clout. Do you retroactively think about that? Do you ever hit up some of these guys like, hey, what about a collaboration? Me and Braden Smith, Braden and Bobby Buckets.
Man, that would be nice. Yeah, I should try to get on Braden's, ride his coattails to some NIL funds. That would be pretty sweet. But yeah, no, I mean, we all the guys, from my era and, even before and after, whenever we're around each other, we certainly, that NIL stuff will come up, and we're, bummed out that it was not in place when we played. Yeah, as a local walk-on, turned scholarship player that I was, I definitely had some popularity back then. And yeah, it would have been nice to maybe try to cash in on some of that, buckets of wings or, buckets of who knows what. Would have been cool to try to cash in on that, but wasn't meant to be. And it's great for these guys now that they're able to make some money along the way while they play hoops.
Bobby Riddell joining us for just another couple minutes on the Payless Liquors hotline, analyst and on the call with Rob Blackman on Purdue basketball. Bobby, you mentioned it a couple times now, the venue thing. I'm always curious, what is, like, as an analyst, what's your favorite Big Ten arena to visit? I can imagine what your least favorite is. I'm just curious what your favorite one is. What's one that gives you like an atmosphere that you're like, this is kind of cool, like, to be in this one?
Well, the Purdue-Indiana rivalry is just so great that I do always enjoy going down to Assembly Hall and watching those Purdue-IU matchups. The intensity of the crowd is incredible down there, and we've had some really good games since I've been doing the radio there. And I will say Indiana's radio position is high level. They have a premier radio spot that's kind of that perfect height to where you're close enough to the action that you can really feel it, but you're just high enough that the officials or the coaches and things of that nature aren't necessarily in your way, and you can see the action unfold really clearly. So I got to give it's tough, of course, to ever give IU props, but I got to give them major props for the radio position. I enjoy calling the games there. Michigan State's always been a favorite of mine. The Breslin Center's a fun place to go visit. Illinois's got a really fun environment, and so there's a bunch of them, but those are probably some of my more favorite ones.
Well, Bobby, we appreciate the time on this Wednesday morning, despite the loss against Michigan last night. Hell of a call with you and Rob Blackman, and we appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. And, yeah, definitely bummed out the Boilers didn't pull it out, but obviously still a number of Big Ten games to be played, and Purdue's still in a really good spot. So we'll see how the rest of the Big Ten season unfolds from here.
Let's get a W against Wisconsin on the weekend, all right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Bobby Riddell, analyst of Purdue basketball on the radio with Rob Blackman. He just joined us on the Payless Liquors hotline there. Again, kind of a weird game last night. You never felt that Purdue was out of it, but they just weren't getting much bench help and everything like that. It seems just a blip on the radar, I think, as far as losses. Nothing more than that. Again, they get ready for Wisconsin. Then they're at Michigan State, a place that Bobby Riddell just said he likes playing. He likes visiting.
Yeah.
Tom Izzo trying to go. Will Tom Izzo have the Big Ten record at that point?
I think he probably will, but it'll be kind of fun if he doesn't, and that's kind of an underlying storyline.
Then you want to be the team that you don't want to be the team that gives it up to him. Like I feel like when those kind of records come up, like the other teams elevate their play, even if you're a crap team. Yeah. All of a sudden you're like, well, we don't want to be the team that gets put in the record books. Like this is the team that gave Tom Izzo the record. No. You want to be the team after that or something. Like you don't want to be the team that gives him the record.
Absolutely.
That's why IU played so well last night.
There you go. And I loved hearing Bobby say that he was cheering for the Hoosiers as a Purdue guy. See,
as a fan of haters.
That's what I'm saying. For those listening, you can unite. At times you can hate. There's other times to, partially hate, be a little indifferent. That's what Bobby was doing last night. But, I mean, what he said about this team being led by Braden Smith, Matt Painter, still being the same guy. I remember covering in Purdue, Illinois game when Carson Edwards came to Champaign and dropped 40.
Mhm.
And Matt Painter was just as, like, not mundane, but just as regular after that game as he is after any game. And he's been the same guy. And when you talk about, and you asked about players staying there, even in the NIL era, not transferring, not a bunch of movement, I think it speaks to the relationship he's able to build and maybe not selling anybody on a dream that isn't realistic. Like, I can't envision Matt Painter coming to anybody's house and telling them, you know, obviously they'll talk NIL, but I can't envision him saying, you know, something that's just ridiculous. Like, we'll pay you this and we'll play you, we'll promise you this. That dude, no. His resume, what he's been able to do with the players that he's gotten, and most of them not being, you know, these 5-star, super high-level recruits. I mean, credit to him in that program. So
he does it his way, and he's not even worried about transfer portal and NIL and all that stuff. And it's worked so far. I don't know how many coaches can do that in this day and age, but for Matt Painter, he's got the secret sauce.
Yeah, I love that he hasn't complained about it,
No.
you know, a lot. And that's been my thing is, like, you guys have gotten paid for so long as far as coaches and executives and, you know, different university employees related to athletics, whereas now players are getting paid, and he's not made one excuse about that at all. He's just gone out there and win. And so they want to bounce back from last night's loss to Michigan. And to your point, Mark, Michigan is a good team.
Yep.
Like, this wasn't what IU did to Michigan State, where it's like, man, this team's on a losing streak that came in here to our house and beat us. You lost to a really good team on the road by 2 points. And obviously no moral victories, but I do think that this is a very good basketball team that could be better if they get some bench help, because scoring as many points as me back at the crib is not going to help you. Not at all.
Not at all. So we'll see. They get back to work later this weekend. But by the way, Michigan State, I was looking it up just to see if they will face Purdue next. No, they have a game in between. Michigan State takes on, who is it? I just lost it now. They take on Illinois this weekend. So they will have
could be a loss.
Tom Izzo will have his crack at passing Bob Knight when they take on Illinois. After that, though, Michigan State faces Purdue. So that'll be interesting if Illinois somehow meets the challenge. That Purdue and Michigan State game could mean some history there for Tom Izzo. So we'll see what happens there. We still have a pop quiz to get to at some point. We've got a $25 Cluster Truck gift card. Shout out to Evan Sherrill, who is giving that out. That's the rest of the week, by the way, folks. We got a $25 gift card. Even if you go 0 for 5 in the pop quiz, you will get that $25 Cluster Truck gift card. We've got that coming up. We've got some more thoughts. Kevin is, I'm assuming, still at jury duty. He's not leaving anytime soon. I keep saying that he needs to just yell, like, I'm a local celebrity on the radio. I'm Kevin Bowen. Haven't you seen my We Grow Hair Indy
Take his
ads?
hat off and everything.
Well, that's the thing. He got the hair stuff, and then he's got a hat every day. I'm like, Kevin, let it flow, baby. What are you doing?
He's a very humble guy, that Kevin Bowen.
He is. He is. He's more than I would, because I probably need that treatment soon on my side as well. Getting a little thin. 3 girls will do that to you and everything like that. But Kevin, let it flow, man. I don't know what he's doing. Anyway, we've got some morning check down stuff to get into. We got a ton of basketball, some other stuff going on around the world of sports. Let's get into a morning check down right now. On the defense. Rough night for the Pacers last night. Final 2 games before the All-Star break. Came up short against the New York Knicks last night, 128-115. Losers were the Pacers on their home court. They held Jalen Brunson in check. Unfortunately, they didn't do the same for Karl Anthony Towns and Josh Hart. Those two combined for 70 points, 22 rebounds in the game. That was just unbelievable to see that they had that kind of output going on. After the game, though, Rick Carlisle talked about the poor defense, specifically in the paint.
You know, Towns had a great night. He was almost impossible to deal with tonight because he's making outside shots and causing a lot of damage on the inside. And a lot of the plays were so quick, you couldn't even get to him with double teams. So, you know, he played great. Obviously, Hart was a major problem with rebounding, cutting, and transition. You know, we did a good job on Brunson, but too many other guys got going. McBride had a huge night. So did Shamet, and you know, we just we were not good, and we struggled, and it was just a rough night.
Josh Hart does not score 30 points very often.
No.
That's only his 5th 30-point game of his career. Mm-hmm. So, Yeah, you probably want to guard that guy. I mean, I get it. He's not a scorer, but he is in the NBA, and he is pretty good at making layups, which they give up a ton of those in that game.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Pacers have dropped 3 of their last 4. They wrap up the final game before the All-Star break. That's tonight. So the second night of a back-to-back. Fortunately for the Pacers, it's against the Washington Wizards, who flat out stink. I know they have Chris Middleton that they acquired at the trade deadline for Kyle Kuzma and everything like that. But the Wizards, on paper, they stink. They should not give the Pacers trouble. This is a get-right game for the Indiana Pacers. Heading the All-Star break on a high note. Take care of business against the Wizards. You can listen to that. Coverage starts right here on The Fan, starting at 6:30. Tip-off at 7. On the college hoops night, we talked to Bobby Riddell just a little bit ago. Unfortunately, Purdue was on the wrong side of Michigan last night. 75-73 losers there. Not a lot of bench help for them, but again, just a blip on the radar. Purdue will get back to work. They host Wisconsin on Saturday, so that is a tough one coming up. They've also got at Michigan State and then at Indiana, so they got some tough games coming up. Speaking of the Hoosiers, the Indiana parlay, it died a quick death last night. Shockingly, though, it wasn't because of Indiana. They topped number 11 Michigan State 71-67. I was floored that one, of all the ones I had the bets on, that one hit. That was the one I had the least confidence in. But Indiana got taken care of business. They topped Tom Izzo, held him off from passing Bob Knight's all-time Big Ten win record. So Indiana, I know Mike Woodson's on his way out, but that was probably their best win of the season.
It absolutely is. I mean, they were not only able to respond early to regain the lead, they went to the zone that Kevin Bowen was joking about, looked like a Syracuse zone from back in the day, and then they were able to finish, which is what they weren't able to do in a number of games this season, because I'm not going to lie, I was kind of waiting for them to let the rope go, but they were able to hang on, make some free throws, and win a huge game that obviously they hope to build on moving forward as we get into tournament time and things like that.
Michigan State, their first loss at home of the season. The problem with Michigan State that I always have is come tournament time, they can always have like a really good seed and everything like that, and I'm feeling good. I take them to go far, and then they get bounced early. And then years that they're not that good, I pick them to lose early, and they go far. So I feel like I can never win with Michigan State. I don't know if you fill out brackets or anything like that. But Michigan State is one of my Achilles heels when it comes to my brackets, because no matter what I pick them to do, they do the exact opposite year in and year out.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think Tom Izzo usually gets the most out of his players, but you just never know what that exactly means. For example, his players play extremely hard, but this season in particular, they can't always shoot. So I could see this team, getting bounced because they can't shoot, or getting hot and making 7 threes against some team they're not supposed to beat. So you just never know with them. So I feel you on that. But the good news about brackets is, I could fill it out. Someone's dog could fill it out. My mom could fill it out, who watches no college basketball. And we probably all have the same chances of getting it right.
My oldest daughter, who's now 7, almost 8, a few years ago, she filled out her first bracket, and she was just going off of the names of like the mascots and everything like that. So she had the Richmond Spiders to win the national championship at one point. And then okay. Jake thought that was cool, so he bought her a Richmond Spiders like mascot doll for her, and she still has it to this day.
That is such a Jake
But it's a teddy bear. So how is it the Spiders, but it's a teddy bear? I don't know.
You wanted her to get a stuffed spider? I mean, that would scar me as a kid.
I mean, Richmond Spiders. I don't know what a teddy bear is doing. Anyway. Elsewhere around sports, Kevin Durant became the 8th player in NBA history to reach 30,000 points last night as the Suns fell to the Grizzlies. That was good for Kevin Durant. The NFL coaching cycle is over, unless we get some random firing here. But Eagles OC Kellen Moore named the official head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So that wraps it up. The coaching cycle of 2024/2025 is in the books there. So now the Eagles have to figure out what they're doing at offensive coordinator. On the other side, though, Corbin handed me what I would consider a telegram these days, because it wasn't via text, it was via paper. A former Colt has predicted what the Colts are going to do at the backup quarterback position. I'm not loving it, by the way. We'll tell you who it is, what's happening. It's the Fan Morning Show. Mark Dykton, James Boyd, and Corbin Lingenfelter. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Wednesday. Kevin Bones started the show for about 30 minutes. Then he tagged me in like a tag team match because he had to go to jury duty. And then we go to the break. And lo and behold, who walks in the door but one Kevin Bowen? You want to explain yourself, sir?
Boy, I will tell you what. First, wasn't that a great WWE reference? I mean,
It was.
That's pretty much what I did, right? When that judge walked in and whatever, there's 50 of us in there, prospective jurors, and he uttered the phrase, "They've reached a plea." I mean, that eruption in the room.
Seriously?
Very reminiscent of like when Marcus Freeman said to the Notre Dame football team, "I'm going to be your coach." Or, I'm trying to think back to like my high school days. Imagine the teacher walking in and be like, "Yeah, about that test we're going to have."
Yeah, watch a movie today.
There's no test. So
We're going to watch Stand By Me.
They
You all
reached a
get
plea.
A's.
I guess got a little nerve-wracking there with the jurors in the building, potentially some witnesses in the building. So I watched one of the worst produced, horrific acting 17-minute videos on being a juror in the state of Indiana I've ever seen.
Did you have to relieve your phone? Did you ever get to that point?
No, but I was trying to be very respectful, so I kept the phone in the pocket for a lot longer than I usually do. Guy in front of me, I swear, played 100 games of solitaire during the entire
Respect.
17-minute video. It kind of sparked. I forgot how great of a game solitaire is.
Well, that means he's terrible at it, though, if he's playing that many games, right?
Well, yeah, I know. I feel like if he didn't get aces, he was just like quickly moving on. But no, it was a nice experience over there. I think I was there for an hour, and I'm like, hey, come back and see Mark and see James and see Corbin.
Well, it was quite shocking to see. I was hoping for the sequestering, quite honestly,
I was
just
so happy
for show content.
I think I get $30.
Hey,
Oh,
so it was a total
nice.
loss.
Yeah,
Are these going on some of your parlays or?
and there was part of me like as it kind of went on, I was like, you know what? I am kind of interested to see like
See?
what the experience is like.
Maybe I'll get that chance one
But
day.
now I'm out for two years.
See? Nate Atkins says he's wanted in the state of Ohio. He can't go back because he got requested to be on jury duty. He's like, I don't live there anymore. I'm like, well, now you're going to cross state lines and you're going to get in trouble.
Nate, that does not shock me about Nate, honestly. So what did I miss? You guys?
So you
talk
missed
some Colts,
Nate
talk a lot of-
Atkins. Nate
hoopage
Atkins
from last
subverting
night?
the law in Ohio. Bobby Riddell talked his love for IU, how he's rooting for IU. James got that out of him last segment, so that was interesting to see.
Yes.
Other
They're
than
going
that, you didn't
to
really
need a Michigan loss, right?
No.
Purdue's going to need a Michigan loss here down the stretch.
Yeah, we're also trying to figure out who's going to give Tom Izzo the Big Ten wins record. Is it going to be Illinois, or is that going to come to Purdue in a few days?
So Illinois beat UCLA, right,
Mhm.
last night? And yeah, I said this earlier on that first check down. Indiana's got UCLA on Friday. They have yet to win east of the Pacific time zone. So, like, I know they have a good record and they're a quad one team, but, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll be curious to see what that line is tomorrow when it comes out. I mean, again, on paper, Indiana, and who knows if the zone is all of a sudden unearthed some things, they have an ability to try and make – I kind of consider their bubble life after last night. Indiana's the hungover basketball program, and they've drank 1 cup of Pedialyte.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like light, okay? So they feel a little bit refreshed, but there's still a long way to go to get fully back on the right track. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can never do the Pedialyte. It's
They
too
need a
thick for
shower.
me.
They probably need to sit on the toilet. They probably need to, eat some bacon, some highly greased food. But they have drank the first cup of Pedialyte.
Give me Powerade or give me Gatorade all day over Pedialyte. Pedialyte is too thick. It's like almost like a syrup you're drinking, I feel like.
What about for your kids?
I was about to say, after everything else you drank, you should be okay.
That's true. I should be immune. I should be immune to it. I should be
So I
superhuman.
did hear you guys tease, and it honestly had me itching to get back in the studio. Walk me through this.
Okay.
There's
So-
an ex-Colt player that
Mhm.
has a quarterback. Would you call it a dream scenario for the team?
I would say more
Depends on the
nightmare,
kind of dream.
at least in my eyes. Yeah. So you were out. We were talking to Bobby Riddell, and Corbin hands me the 2025 version of a telegram. He hands me a sheet of paper with words written on it, and he said, "Jeff Saturday."
Now, speaking of that, they did say that that's how I would communicate with the bailiff.
Yeah.
If I had any questions for the judge, I would have to, write down on a piece of paper. That's what the 17-minute video showed me. So I was like, God, my handwriting is
I know.
so bad.
Mine
Mine is
awful, too.
terrible.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
get
mine's
exposed.
bad.
Like I had to fill out a questionnaire with that handwriting. I'm like, can we not do it like on my phone? Or
The
something?
bailiff would look at me and be like, "We need to talk because I can't make out what you're writing down right now." Anyway, former Colts center and former head coach Jeff Saturday on ESPN's Get Up just a little bit ago. Again, we were talking to Bobby Riddell when Corbin handed me this. He predicted who the Colts' backup quarterback is going to be. And I can't say I'm excited about it. Jeff Saturday said on Get Up he is predicting that Aaron Rodgers will either sign with the Indianapolis Colts or the Tennessee Titans in the offseason?
Oh, dear Lord.
You two cover the Colts on a daily basis. I need some thoughts here because I don't like that at all.
No. And I get it. Aaron Rodgers had a solid season on paper, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. But I saw him play in person this past year, and he looked like a relic out there. And for those saying, oh, he's coming off an Achilles tear, you got to give him more than 1 year, he's 41.
Mm-hmm.
What about Father Time? So I say this is a no chance of this happening. And if it does, we would all just rip Chris Ballard and whoever else had the audacity to bring him in.
Yeah, I'll happily eat my words if I'm wrong. I think better chance James Boyd's under center for the Colts next season. Carson Wentz under center. I just, in no way, shape, or form can I see that. And I feel like Jeff Saturday's had some wild Colts takes in the last, 6 months. Am I wrong? I feel like he had a couple of others that I was just like, wow, is he, trying to get at the organization almost for, how everything was handled?
I'm always curious.
I don't know.
He's connected to the owner. We know that. We know that when he was on with our show.
I don't think the owner would want Rodgers.
I don't think
any
so.
longer.
No, I think that's just an easy thing to say because of what they've done in the past, getting the veteran quarterbacks. But I think us being around the team, feeling the pulse of the team, knowing what this upcoming season means, you just don't do that.
Is this the Colts saying the only way to get McAfee back in good graces is to bring Rodgers in?
Well, my thought is you bring in Aaron Rodgers. First of all, that's a ridiculous thing to do because Aaron Rodgers isn't coming to any team and being the backup. So you're bringing him in. You're already saying, okay, we're pulling the plug on the Anthony Richardson experience. Then we're bringing this old quarterback who has not shown that he's got any capabilities anymore. He's showing that he's old and he's cranky and he's going to go into a darkness retreat, not show up to mandatory meetings. So you're pulling the plug on your young quarterback you spent the 4th overall pick on. You're bringing in a headache who is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that makes zero sense, especially when you're entering a season that is, by all accounts, feet to the fire time for a lot of people in that organization.
James, I don't know how you feel quarterback-wise, but, all these names. And Justin Fields is probably the one that when I say it out loud, I don't meet it with immediate disgust. All of these names, they're all met with some, sound that's ugh, I guess. I mean, all of them are. I don't know. Maybe Jameis Winston doesn't reach that level, but whether it's Taylor Heineke or Marcus Mariota or Mac Jones or Daniel Jones or hell, Carson Wentz, I guess, is on the backup list. Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I don't know of anyone out there that would be met with Colts fans reacting like, oh, yeah, I like that.
No.
Outside of Fields. I do feel like Fields can meet the still relatively young, has played good football. You feel like the arrow's kind of pointing up on him, maybe of a similar play style to what you have with Anthony Richardson from a dual threat ability. That, I think, is the only one of these, I guess, realistic quarterback names that could be met with okay, I can see that.
Yeah, I'd throw Daniel Jones in there. I know, I get it. It was rough. It was terrible. Ended very badly with the Giants. But keep in mind, he did help them get to the playoffs, won a playoff game. I mean, those things did happen at some point in the history of mankind. So I was asking them, and I follow with you, Kevin, and get your thoughts on this. How realistic is the QB competition this offseason? Can a guy really come in and win the job?
Yeah, competition is obviously it's a kind of a sexy word. Obviously it's a popular word that Ballard used so much a month ago. I tend to think it's Richardson or bust,
and that's why.
And I tend to think that's all this regime should get. Should they really get another swing at quarterback at some?
Fair.
And I guess in general they'll get a 2025 swing. Let's say for example, Richardson bleeps the bed, it goes horribly. Obviously they'll pivot to some other quarterback, you would assume, in season and, play that out for however long it would last. But I just don't think there is an answer there. I don't see a Baker Mayfield with Tampa. I don't see a Sam Darnold with the Vikings. I don't see even a Geno Smith with the Seahawks. That's just not there for me on paper.
You can turn your nose up at the quarterbacks you listed. That's also the dark reality of NFL free agent quarterbacks.
Oh, certainly.
We just
I'm
talked
not
about
acting now, again, there are their strike goal with a Baker Mayfield or something like that, but I just don't see that on this list of quarterbacks. So, I mean, to answer your question, James, I just feel like it is there will be some level of we'll call it competition, but if indeed you bring in Taylor Heineke and he beats out Anthony Richardson, well, I mean, start the Awful for Arch hashtag or whatever thing you want for 2026.
Yeah, the reason I asked that was my follow would be, would that decentivize, if that's even a word, or make Justin Fields perhaps look elsewhere when it comes to opportunities or other quarterbacks where it's like, I'm not going to get a fair shake because they're going to go into 2025 with this guy as their guy no matter what? Or do I go here and potentially try to win the job during the season? Which is the possibility. I mean, we've seen Anthony get benched once. It's not like he's immune to it happening again. Obviously, the Colts would not want that to happen. But I'm just curious to know how much a real shot will factor into the decision to come try to play here.
You watched Richardson last year during camp. I mean, I would argue he looked fine. You know,
that's true.
If you look at his complete, like I guess I don't see it going horrifically in the offseason. I mean, if you look, not to like get too nerdy into training camp numbers, but if you look at his training camp numbers from last year, the completion percentage is like 10% higher than it was the year before. I mean, you could have said, hey, the arrow was kind of pointing up, and then obviously, you know, it got real in the regular season, and the rest is history.
We all said the same thing too, though. Like, he is, I mean, one of a handful, but really him in particular. You cannot evaluate him on anything other than the actual game. I'm so serious. Like, we'll be out there sweating our butts off, keeping track of the, you know, completions and the interceptions and what went well, what didn't work well in Westfield, and no one will care, you know, beyond that day.
Like until September 12th or September 14th, whatever the first day is.
And that's it. Can you really run? Can you stay healthy? Yeah. All those things you're just not going to really get a full evaluation of.
I know I haven't got a chance to talk a little basketball. Can we talk a little hoopage on the other side?
Yeah.
That was a hell of a win last night in East Lansing.
We've got basketball on the other side. We've got pop quiz with a $25 cluster truck gift card on the other side. We've got a full studio, by the way. We've got enough for a bobsled team in here right now. Got a 4-man weave going.
Makes me want to watch Cool Runnings.
This is the Fan Morning Show. He is Kevin Bowen, James Boyd. I'm Mark Dykton, Cormid Lingenfelter on the ones and twos. We've got basketball talk. We've got the pop quiz to round it out. We've got 18 minutes left. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Pop quiz coming up shortly. 317-239-1070. If you'd like to play and try to get a $25 Cluster Truck gift card and a Jiffy Lube oil change. We'll get to that in a little bit. Kevin Bowen, stuck at jury duty for the better part of the show, but has returned. He has some basketball thoughts he wants to get off his luscious chest.
And I must say,
I don't know why I said luscious.
Yeah, boy, that makes me want to go back to jury duty. I must say, I was looking forward to it. After watching the 17-minute video, I was like, you know what? This is my civic duty.
Mhm.
Come on.
Do you know what the crime was that you were going to possibly be on the jury for? Did they get into that?
No, I was really hoping that one of the 50 would have raised their hand and asked the judge. Don't think the judge would have been super revealing on that. Seemed like a nice guy.
It wouldn't have been the dude that was playing 100 games of solitaire. He would have been doing his own thing.
No, he didn't say a word all day, and then all of a sudden he heard that news, and that man sprinted out of there quicker than Usain Bolt. Yeah, luscious chest. That's hell of a way, boy.
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't think you've ever come close to saying anything like that to me
Well,
before.
we were talking about your hair and how like you got the We Grow Hair Indy done, and then you wear a hat a lot. And I said, he's covering up the gorgeous locks.
I know.
So I think I was looking at your hair on your head that is covered by a hat, and for some reason I looked at your chest, and I was like, I don't know.
You're just too humble of a guy, Kevin.
been a
You got
long
to
day.
take the hat off, take the shirt off.
This is a hell of
Take
a
the compliment.
hell of a way to start the final break. Again, 317-239-1070. As Mark said, $25 Cluster Truck gift card to try and get it back on track. I did want to mention, just to echo kind of what I said to lead off the show, just how impressed I was. And I say this in all seriousness, with the coaching of Indiana last night, and obviously the receptiveness of some of those players. I've been clamoring for a starting lineup change to, I would say, reward the 5 that have earned it. I don't know if these are the 5, best players on the team, most talented, but to me, a grouping of Galloway, Leal, Luke Goody, Mackenzie Mbako, Umar Ballo, those are the 5 to me that have earned the starting job over the class, especially when you look at recent play. And finally, you saw the starting lineup change, and look at how Miles Rice and Malik Renew responded to that. I mean, they were arguably Indiana's 2 best players last night. I mean, certainly were huge in the second half, especially in getting that win. And then, I mean, they get down 18-8. Again, for those that didn't watch it, I mean, that was a very reminiscent start of what we've seen, and it's looking like, oh boy, here comes another double-digit road loss. And lo and behold, Mike Woodson and company, they go zone. And I think Kenya Hunter might have the scout last night. I don't know if he offered that up, but that under 12 timeout, they come out in zone, and it looked like, 2013 Sweet 16 against Syracuse, just on the flip side, benefiting Indiana. So worst Big Ten three-point shooting team in the entire league is Michigan State, and they certainly benefited from it last night. So great win. Great win. I know you guys have talked about it, but I just want to make sure that we throw that in there because it's been a lot on the other end of it, deservedly so, for Indiana here over the past few months.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when Mike Woodson was asked whose idea was it to go zone, and he froze up.
Yeah, that was kind of odd. It was a long pause.
He's like, it's the team's decision.
And they went a little zone against Michigan.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, but they didn't come out in it.
Right.
Last night, Michigan State gets up 18-8, and I mean that's coaching. I mean, okay, you've been punched in the face, and now how do you respond? And they did something differently. But yeah, Woodson's answer was a bit odd.
I would have just, if it wasn't my idea, I would have took credit. I'm on the way out anyways. Skip, y'all. Everything good that happened here is because of me.
One item to get to before we get to the pop quiz here. I know Bart tweeted at us in the break. Isn't taking a 3rd or 4th rounder on Will Howard or Dylan Gabriel a better option than anything you guys were discussing free agency-wise? James, your thoughts on a mid-round rookie as competition for Anthony Richardson?
I was talking about this the other day with my editor, former Colts reporter Jim Aiello, and I think it's
great human.
Decent, yeah, great human. I think it's actually a decent thought. Ideally, in that scenario, you would obviously bring back AR, bring in a free agent for competition, and then you would invest in a day 3 quarterback that you possibly can see some type of future in. And by day 3, I mean it has to be probably 4th round, 5th round at the latest, because once you get past that, the likelihood of that guy becoming any type of starter is very, very, very slim. But I don't hate the idea, honestly.
I like a dart at quarterback at some point, but I don't think that really defines legit. Is a mid-round rookie really going to send a strong message to Richardson? Now, again, I don't know if any of these guys are going to send a huge message to Richardson, but at least in the case of, you brought up Daniel Jones, and I was met with, just the ugly sound that I made. But Daniel Jones has what? I have no idea how many starts he has in his career, but he has a lot.
Yeah.
Hell, he's won a playoff game on the road. So I think that would be a little different. But I just think quarterback has changed, especially with the Plain South Richardson. I draft one every year.
You're taking a mid-round
That makes
quarterback,
sense.
by the way. The way that Anthony Richardson has been healthy in his NFL career, you better be damn sure that guy can play if you need to go to him.
Yeah, and that's my thing though. I wouldn't
That
draft.
can't be it, I guess.
Yeah,
is
I
what
wouldn't
I'm saying.
draft a quarterback with that being my sole plan.
Right.
I'm saying it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to supplement your plan or complement it rather with that.
I don't think I have a headset, so I might let you two handle the pop quiz.
Okay. Well, there's a headset over here, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we
You
had
wanna
we had a full bobsled team earlier. Now Scotty stepped in, so now we have an alternate there. You can be an alternate juror too, Scotty, if you need to.
I was kind of
We've been
curious if I'd be the alternate.
Yeah. Well, if you watch the Jury Duty show on Amazon Prime, you know that's not the worst
I
thing. in
gotta
the
check
world.
this show out because
Oh,
this
you
is
gotta
the
watch
second
it.
reference.
Is it Ronald Gladden, Mark?
Yes.
Is that the main? I
Mhm.
mean, James, you'd be
James
laughing your ass
Marsden.
All right, I gotta check it out.
That was a good show. Anyway, though, Scotty is in the studio, which means it is time for the pop quiz. So, Corbin, we have full phone lines, I assume. Who do we have? Fast fingers.
Fast fingers, we have Dennis.
Dennis, good morning to this busy morning show. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Hanging in there. All right. So you get the $25 Cluster Truck gift card, regardless of how well or poor you do on this pop quiz. But if you go 5 for 5, you also get the Jiffy Lube oil change at your disposal. So, Dennis, are you ready for this 3-man weave when it comes to the pop quiz?
I am ready.
All right, Kevin's got a headset. We'll just kind of go down the dial here. So I'll start it off. Dennis, number 1, Karl Anthony Towns had a 40-point double-double with Josh Hart adding a 30-point double-double last night as the Knicks beat the Pacers at the Fieldhouse last night. Who led the Pacers in scoring last night? Was it Benedict Mathurin off the bench, Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, or Thomas Bryant?
I didn't watch all the game, but Bryant was scoring. I'm going to go with Bryant.
All right. Number 2, this was Karl Anthony Towns' fourth 40-point, 10-rebound game this season, the second most 40-10 double-doubles in the season in Knicks history. Who holds the record? Bernard King, Bob McAdoo, Walt Bellamy, or Patrick Ewing?
I am going to go with Bernard King.
Dennis, number 3 here. Tom Izzo, he remains tied with Bob Knight, 353 career Big Ten wins, as Izzo Spartans obviously lost to IU last night. Who did Knight surpass to become the Big Ten wins leader? Was it A, Ward Piggy Lambert, B, Lou Henson, C, Branch McCracken, or D, Judd Heathcote?
I'm going to go with D, Judd Heathcote.
A field house up in West Lafayette, right, Scotty?
Sounds like an old,
Sorry, Dennis, who did you say?
Let's go with Gimpy.
Do it again?
Gimpy.
He said Judd Heathcote was his answer.
That's who I said at first. But can I get the list again?
I thought I heard an oink in the background.
Yeah, Piggy.
Oh, Piggy,
there we
okay.
go. All right, Dennis.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Kevin Durant became the 8th player in NBA history to reach 30,000 points last night as his Phoenix Suns lost to Memphis. KD trails only LeBron as the NBA's all-time leading points leader in scoring against among active players. Who's the third most who currently is playing in the NBA? James Harden, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, or Russell Westbrook? Third.
Let's go James Harden.
Look at that. There you go, Dennis.
And last but not least, the NHL is on hold for 10 days as the Four Nations face-off gets underway tonight in Montreal. The teams are made up of players under an NHL contract for this season who are on a roster as of December 2nd. The U.S. and Canada make up 2 of the 4 teams. Which of the following is also one of the 4 teams in the Four Nations face-off? Russia, Sweden, Germany, or Czech Republic?
I actually think it's Sweden.
Oh,
Look at Dennis
that.
finishing
Finish
strong.
from Dennis.
Ooh, look at that.
All right, Dennis, we got less than a minute left, so we're going to fly through this. 3, 4, and 5, boom, aces. Yes, Ward Piggy Lambert was answer to question 3. James Harden, the third most active player on the scoring for the NBA. And Sweden is correct in the four-nation face-off. Unfortunately, started off not so great. Pascal Siakam was leading scorer for the Pacers last night, not Thomas Bryant. Siakam had 24 points, and Patrick Ewing was the person who has the most highest double-double record, Patrick Ewing. So thank you for hanging in there, Dennis. Corbin will get your information. You do get the Cluster Truck gift card. But yeah, Weird show tonight, guys, right?
Boy, the Wizards are a bunch of misfits tonight. Pacers are a 10-point favorite as a road back-to-back traveling team. I mean, this Wizards roster is unbelievable.
Yeah. So Pacers will wrap up the All-Star break tonight. We'll see how it goes. James, thanks for filling in the last couple days. Brendan King in the chair.
Thank you, James.
Tomorrow, it is the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton, Corbin Lingenfelter.